right, so welcome everyone to the 2025 series of Caribbean Thought Lectures at the Jamaica Theological Seminary, and today we embark on a critical journey, asking: is there a paradigm for the study of Caribbean thought or Caribbean studies? Again, we will ask the question: is there a paradigm? Is there a paradigm for the study of Caribbean thought or Caribbean studies? Should there be one? Should there be a paradigm? Is there a paradigm for the study of Caribbean thought or Caribbean studies? And should there be one? One akin to the Afrocentric paradigm, championed by scholars like Dr. Mazama, Dr. Molefi Asante at Temple University in the Africology department. These are not mere theoretical questions. They challenge the very core of how we understand ourselves as Caribbean people, our place in the world, and our trajectory for the future. While the answers may not be fully realized today, we will begin to explore them as we contend with the idea of a Caribbean that is unique to its people and place, yet constantly shaped by external forces adjudicating its future. When the study of Caribbean thought was first conceived, this study in 2019 by Reverend Dr. Garnet Roper, and if you guys had a chance to review the syllabus last week, the assignment last week was to review the syllabus, to read it through and through. Of course, we're going to spend some time to reflect on it. We're going to get some time to go over it. But when you look at, and you guys should have a copy of it right now. But when you look at Caribbean thought, it's on my other computer. When you look at the syllabus, in fact, we can look at the syllabus now. The question again we're asking: is there a paradigm to the Caribbean thought? Of course, you're going to be asking, what are you talking about, Renaldo? Is there a paradigm? What is a paradigm? Of course, we will have to ask ourselves some questions. What is a paradigm? And of course, what is Afrocentric paradigm? Because I say, is there a paradigm? Is there a paradigm? Is there a paradigm to Caribbean thought and Caribbean studies? One that is Afrocentric. One that is Afrocentric. One that is Afrocentric within Caribbean academia, like that of the Afrocentric paradigm. Now, when you look at the course description says that the course focuses on and explores the diverse currents of Caribbean thought, which have influenced the development of Caribbean societies from colonialism and beyond. That was it. But recently, we have adjusted the syllabus. In fact, you guys are the first one who will get an updated syllabus, in the sense that what we're talking about, what we're contending for today, what we're asking for today is there a paradigm? Is there a Caribbean paradigm? Is there a Caribbean paradigm? Is there Afrocentric paradigm? So the idea of Afrocentric paradigm, I'm not giving away much, because you will understand clearly what I'm talking about. Is there a Caribbean paradigm? Because last semester or last year, we started thinking about a research looking at the changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. And you guys will see that in the syllabus. Chantel will talk about that later, because it's available. If you go to ResearchGate, you can go to my ResearchGate page, and the study is there. The study is there. So in fact, let me see if I could share my screen and bring up the syllabus, Caribbean Thought 2025. Here we go. Let's share that. You guys should be seeing my screen now. That's fine. You can come through. Um, um, admit Johnson. Yeah, when you look at the course description, I say that the course focuses on and explores the diverse currents, And when you study the Caribbean and where we've been and where we are, the Caribbean has gone through a lot in its diverse history. In fact, we say that what we will ask the question, what is the Caribbean? We say the Caribbean is an invention. The Caribbean is an invention. Of course, that is for us to debate. Is the Caribbean invention? And when we say the Caribbean is an invention, what are we talking about? The Caribbean being an invention. In terms of, and of course, I will talk about the idea of hybrid culture, a culture that is hybridized, a language that is hybridized, a religion and an identity that is hybridized. We won't get into it today because that's not the class for that. I'm whetting your appetite and your palate. But when we created this class, the course, we said that when the class was created initially by Reverend Dr. Garnet Roper in 2019, the course focused initially on exploring the diverse currents of Caribbean or Caribbean thought that have come to create the Caribbean philosophy, Caribbean ideology, which have influenced the development of Caribbean societies from colonialism up to now. Now, Africologists, people who study African values and culture and so on, and people who are opposed to that, to Eurocentrism, they would have a problem with that. When we were teaching that course, we said that we talked about colonialism, but last year we started thinking about the fact that actually Africans were sailing to the Caribbean even before Christopher Columbus. Before colonialism, Africans were coming here. Before Christopher Columbus and Europeans, there were people living here. So the course description, we realize, is wrong. To say that we are looking at the Caribbean, the currents and maybe it's not wrong because there was no paradigm to the study, to the understanding of Caribbean in academia. A paradigm, one that focuses on and facilitates the development of Afrocentricity in the ways that Afrocentricity is to be understood and developed. Because what we think about, what we know of Afrocentric and Afrocentricity is not Afrocentricity. To talk patois is not necessarily Afrocentric and Afrocentricity. To have church and play drums is not necessarily Afrocentric and Afrocentricity, but that's part of it. Yet we still embrace the idea of Eurocentric even within our very own outlook in life as Caribbean people who are influenced by that which is Africa. So that we have determined that anything black is not good, anything African is not good, because we have embraced a logic, an academic, an education that does not help to facilitate a scientific lens that centers us on Africa, that focuses on a position of victory, but instead it focuses on a position of oppression where we begin to think of the Caribbean from colonialism representing a place of corruption and conquest. But we as a people and the African part of us does not begin in colonialism. Our culture, our identity, and the world does not begin at colonialism. It doesn't even begin in Europe. It began from way before that. What the Afrocentric paradigm does, or the African paradigm does, it focuses our study. It helps to facilitate and understanding and appreciation and a study, a scientific study that focuses on a culture that has been corrupted, bastardized, and misunderstood to the point where the Jamaican government could say that we're going to have open discussion to discuss the legalization of obi, and people would come out and say it's evil, promoting and highlighting the corruption of the African, downgrading it to something that is evil, downgrading it to something that is black because nothing black no good. That's the logic. In fact, I said to somebody the other day, I'm afraid to say that I am black or to use the term black. I'd rather use the term I'm African because the because the identity of being black, we say we are black people. What is black? Black is what is black? They have created a logic that says black, we understand within our culture, is within Eurocentrism, that black is bad, black is dirty, black is ugly, black is corrupted. Black is not good. Nevertheless, that we begin with that premise. When you study premise, when you study common sense, science, and reason, and start to understand how you arrive at truth, looking at premise and logic and deductive and inductive logic. You said you start with the first premise, the first principle. We understand that black is not good, black is dirty, black is bad. Africans are black. Therefore, Africans are black. Africans are not good. Africans are dirty. They're not to be trusted. That is a logical argument. It follows the laws of logic. I said, it follows the laws of logic. And the Afrocentric paradigm does not within the study of the Afrocologist who embraces the Afrocentric paradigm does not include or does not utilize European authors or European books or European tropes or ideologies or assumptions when they approach life or the cosmos or when they approach even themselves. Because that study, Eurocentrism or Eurocentric, which is part of what has come to create the Caribbean, includes a supremacist ideology that continues to promote one culture over another and downplays the African culture and downplays the Caribbean, beginning with a Caribbean, beginning in colonialism. The history of the Caribbean does not begin in 1962. It does not begin in the 1400s or in 1492 or 1494 or 1493. When it does not begin in 1565. Okay? It began from the time of Kemet. The African paradigm focuses on a position of victory than the position of oppression. So our literature, our worship, the understanding of ourselves as a people, then moves beyond thinking about it from the perspective of the colonists and coming out of that oppressive environment to an understanding that our beginning as a people begin way beyond that, began from the time of Kemet himself. And when we talk about Kemet, who is Kemet? Kemet was one of the first black pharaohs, or one of the first pharaohs, and not the first black pharaoh, because Kemet lived in ancient Africa. What we know of Egypt, but Egypt, there is no such thing as Egypt. Egypt is part of a European understanding of the world, a European history, a history that has been rewritten, that continues to praise and to admire and to stroke European and Eurocentric and white supremacist ideology. When the way we think about Egypt is not the way we are supposed to think about. Egypt was always Africa and was always part of Africa. And that history has been corrupted because the African, because, and then you ask the question, fine, Africa, and then one of the things you're gonna learn, Africa gave the world civilization. When Europe came and saw the beauty and the development and the civilization and the spirituality, the philosophy, the science that was in ancient Africa, we call it from the time of Kemet. The Europeans stole that history and take it as part of their own and had rewritten history. So now very little is known about Kemet. In fact, I didn't know anything about Kemet after doing 4 masters. Okay, not until I started going to Georgetown University, learning about the foundations of Western civilization, beginning with the Iliad, beginning with European history with Mesopotamia, well, even after Mesopotamia. And then you ask, and then I buck upon some people who are from the Asar Asset Society and learn about the Asar and Asset, a people that existed way from before the Iliad and Olympus and so on. Quite interesting. But so the Caribbean history that will not begin from the time of the colonialism. It will the Caribbean, the development and the understanding of Caribbean. So now what we have done is this. We have said that the course focuses on and explored the diverse currents of Caribbean thought, which have influenced the development of Caribbean societies from the time of Kemet to colonialism now. So instead of starting from oppression, because of course when we talk about we want a Caribbean paradigm that focuses on a Caribbean people and understanding of a Caribbean people that focuses on not a Caribbean people within the oppressive, but within the victory, a position of victory. So we said that we're moving away from looking at the diverse currents that have come to shape the Caribbean, starting from colonialism, starting from our conquest, our enslavement. We will not start there, although we won't go deeply into we won't go into Egyptology in this course. We won't have time for that. It's not for this. But we will begin to start thinking about a paradigm that is Caribbean, just like a paradigm that is African, to help to preserve African identity. So the course traces the history of resistance, focusing on a position of victory rather than oppression. So because the course traces the history of the Caribbean people, the history of resistance, but we are not focusing on a position of but we will focus on the position of victory rather than oppression, and examine the quest for equality and the challenge of defining Caribbean identity within this anti-African, post-colonial and neoliberal globalized world, not just within the geographic sense, but also in terms of a diasporic sense. It challenges the students to develop and express their own critical thinking as a Caribbean people within a unique way that helps to realize further the hope of a free, independent Caribbean that is bursting with hope and opportunity. But we say that the course understands that it requires that students begin to critique and explore their own thinking in deeply esoteric and critical and deconstruct history and philosophy. Of course, the course will cause you to do that. It said we are deconstructing history and revisiting. We are deconstructing philosophy and revisiting history in a critical way. By performing critical analysis. So one of the things that we will ask, what is the importance of critical thinking to the study of Caribbean thought at this level? At the end, you will create your own Caribbean thought, leading to a Caribbean journal of young academics and future scholars. The students will be challenged to develop their thinking and analysis within a paradigm. And of course, when you hear about paradigm, we're talking about a pattern within a paradigm is a pattern. People talk about a paradigm. What is a paradigm? A paradigm is a pattern. It is a modus operandi. Say, for example, when you come to the collegiate level, the study and we are studying and we are writing, there's a way we write. at this level. There's okay, and there's a way we reference at this level. So there's a way we argue and engage in academic reflection at this level. Okay, a paradigm. So we said, of course, then the students will be challenged to develop their own thinking and analysis within a paradigm that is Afrocentric rather than Eurocentric. So therefore, there are key terms that we will have to grapple with and we must understand before we begin to engage in these reflections. That you will have when you go home and when you spend time to reflect, you have to now begin thinking about what it is to be Eurocentric as against Afrocentric. And of course, there's a difference between Afrocentricity and Afrocentrism. And when we begin to reflect on the Afrocentric paradigm as written by Dr. Mazama, then we will begin to appreciate that which is truly Afrocentric and that which is Eurocentric. And then we'll begin to ask our questions. Are we a people who are Eurocentric? Our ideas, it is Eurocentric. Our worship, is it Eurocentric? Our philosophy, our philosophy, is it Eurocentric? Or is it, do we have a culture that is what Sarah Balakrishna talk about, an Afropolitanism or a cosmopolitanism? An Afropolitanism out of many one people, but yet there is still the challenge that although we have a out of many one peopleism, there is still the idea that our Eurocentric part takes preeminence over our African culture, because even today Jamaicans are still saying that certain African traditions are devilish. Of course, it wasn't until 1882 that Jamaica abolished or made the practice of obia illegal. The course will make you estranged from yourself, but it is geared towards getting you out of your bubble and considering issues that will make you uncomfortable. The course surveys the history of and philosophy of the Caribbean and how the Caribbean has emerged as a society in the shadows of colonialism and the emergence of neoliberal globalization. It examines the region's central ideological current of 20th century political thought, covers broad topics such as Afrocentric Paradigm, which is a new concept in the study of Caribbean thought. Because as a people, we need to ask ourselves, say, for example, we talk about history from below. What is history from below? What is subaltern? What is Pan-Africanism? As a people, it is we live in a world that is a Eurocentric one, where almost everything is dominated by a validation that is Eurocentric. Eurocentric ideology is this ideology of the day. And even we seek validation from Europe, even when we create our own laws in Jamaica. How we speak, when we speak in certain ways, when there is a when we speak English, there's a validation. When we speak patois, there is an ill validation. Okay, but when we study, but when the study when but as I said to you, when the study of Caribbean thought was first conceived, its aim was largely historical, tracing a trajectory from colonialism to the early 2000s. This timeline often emphasized resistance to imperial domination, the hybridization of a culture, and the formation of Caribbean identity. But as our tools of critical analysis and historical understanding have developed, we've uncovered something unsettling. One, that our history as we know it is limited, if not corrupted. Two, much of what we think we know about Africa, the Caribbean, and even religion is a distortion. Three, the Caribbean itself is an idea, is an invention born from colonial economic imperatives, the way we see it today, geopolitical interests and sociopolitical framework dictated by external powers. So in this light, the Caribbean emerges as a hybrid creation, one shaped by the forces of colonialism, globalization, and a lingering supremacist mold. This mold continues to affect the fortunes of Caribbean nations and their people, as evidenced in contemporary global politics. The US-China tensions over Jamaica, or Russia actions in Europe or Eastern Europe. These dynamics highlight the persistent vulnerabilities of small nations in a world dominated by superpowers. Black people and brown people weren't supposed to have education. They weren't supposed to be able to read the Bible. They weren't supposed to be able to speak pop and understand Western and European language, because we weren't supposed to know the truth. But even after we were exposed to that thinking, that became, it is as if that the idea of privilege and power and position gave way. I mean, sorry, the idea of a true African identity gave way to to uh to that to privilege, power, and position. If the Caribbean, and when we talk about the invention of the Caribbean, and I see the hand, I see Natalie has a hand up, another student had a hand up. If the Caribbean is an invention, then we must interrogate the narratives handed down to us. Again, if the Caribbean is an invention, then we must interrogate the narratives handed down to us. We must. When we ask the question, what is the Caribbean? It is merely a product of colonial extraction. Is it merely a product of extraction and hybridity? We say, what is the Caribbean? Can it reclaim its agency by articulating its own paradigms of identity and thought within a clearly scientific way that departs from and separates itself from European domination and European ideology? Of course, the answer lies in examining our cultural, historical, and spiritual foundations. Too often, the Caribbean has been defined against Africa. Notice, again, let me say this again. Too often, the Caribbean has been defined against Africa, adopting European paradigms that denounce African spirituality and philosophies in favor of Eurocentric frameworks. So let's take, for example, Donald Trump. Donald Trump was said to have been the mastermind or helped to influence the Capitol riot on January 6th. Many police officers were injured or hurt. People, okay. Yet, this election, this in America, the police union turned around. The same police union that suffered during the January 6th attack turned around and endorsed Donald Trump. All day, okay. Of course, this is the same man that vowed that he would pardon the Capitol riot convicts. They are aware of this, yet still he's president and he does it, and all of a sudden people are up in arms about it. When, okay, or the question is, when you have discovered the truth about something, there are those people who don't want people to be exposed to something. Why is it that people don't want to be exposed? People talk about you're too exposed. Why is it that people don't want to be exposed to something? So that they can live out the purity of life as they see it and know it. Why is it that some churches would go at length to say people cannot be exposed to theological education? Why? So that their level of control cannot be mitigated against what you now know. What is the Caribbean? The answer lies in examining our cultural, historical, and spiritual foundations. Too often, the Caribbean has been defined against Africa, adopting European paradigms that denounce African spirituality and philosophies in favor of European frameworks. Even, okay, European frameworks. So although we promote out of many one people, are we talking out of many one people in terms of bodies, but not ideologies and philosophies? Out of many one people, but yet still we do not embrace our African identity, apart from those people of certain cultures and religious ideologies and experience, like the Rastafarians, who are deliberately Rastas because for them they could not embrace a religion that constantly that embraces and promotes racial supremacy over African identity. These same frameworks, these same frameworks and Eurocentric frameworks perpetuated ideas of Africa and by extension blackness that are steeped in oppression, degradation, and dehumanization. To be black in this logic is to be othered, associated with negativity, and subjected to oppression. Even within our own experience as a Caribbean people, if you speak patois or don't speak English, European language too well, but your language sounds close to African or broken, or if you don't embrace that which is European, then it suggests that you have not arrived. We have an elitist culture, a classist culture based on one's ability, one's on whether on your complexion or your ability to that is not ability. I'm trying to find how assimilated you are into the white man's culture, into the European culture, into European identity. To be black in this logic is to be othered, associated with negativity and subjected to oppression. But must we begin this history of Caribbean from colonial trauma? Must we begin it? Must we begin the history of Caribbean from colonial trauma, starting from 1492, or starting from 1565, or shall we start it from a position of victory? A place before colonialism that was bursting with activity. People from Africa were already coming here and intermingling with the locals. People who had a way of doing things. A people who were bucolic. And a people who were not competitive, but appreciate a lifestyle, a nomadic lifestyle, which for them was their way of life. It was their spirituality. Or a history that began from the time of Kemet. Not one where we see Egypt, an Egypt that is white, but an Egypt that was African, that gave the world civilization, that gave the world culture and religion and science and writing. That is the Africa that has helped to bore or give birth to the invention that is the Caribbean, while still keeping its nativist American roots and using various indomitable ways to overcome European influence, penetration, and corruption. Rethinking Caribbean thought, borrowing from Afrocentrism. Perhaps the solution is to begin as Frantz Fanon suggested. Frantz Fanon, we will talk about Frantz Fanon in this course. Frantz Fanon is a figure that you must know in Caribbean thought, in Caribbean studies. In fact, when you come to this class, you should have already have heard the word Caribbean thought. Black skins, white masks, and the wretched of the earth. Borrowing, so as we rethink Caribbean thought, borrowing from Afrocentrism, perhaps the solution is to begin, as Frantz Fanon suggested, with a tabula rasa. What? And for those of us who study psychology, or if you study psychology or you wanting to be guidance counselors, you're going to hear of this word tabula rasa. And when you hear about tabula rasa, it's associated with Sigmund Freud, who was a French psychologist. But of course, a lot of Sigmund Freud's philosophy and ideology was influenced by ancient Africa from the time of Kemet, which you never know about. But here we have a black man here, Frantz Fanon, who was influenced by Sigmund Freud, who lived in Martinique, Frantz Fanon. And I'm saying to you, he provided a way forward. Borrowing from Afrocentrism, the solution is to begin, as Frantz Fanon suggested, with a tabula rasa, a blank slate. You know, there was something called the Bandung Conference in 1955. The Bandung Conference was where all the non-aligned countries in the world, all the countries that were colonized, and wasn't part of the nations of the world in 1955, all came together. They were said to be developing what we call global South. They weren't part of the United Nations. They weren't part of the 1944 agreement. And so in 1955, they came together and created their own agreement that envisioned an independent nations of the world. And Frantz Fanon had wrote his book critiquing and providing a way forward for these independent nations that had come together in 1955 at the Bandung Conference, saying that the way forward is to start with something new. Don't start your new country. As you think about independence, as you think about the new nation, as Caribbean countries, as we look towards independence, as all these independent countries, as we think about independence and we're fighting for independence, and don't accept an independence on the terms of the colonists, or the colonial masters, or the US, or the France, or whatever. The nation, the freedom that you are envisioning and the nation that you want to formulate is one where you have to start anew. But of course, that's not what has happened in the Caribbean, has it? The independence that Cuba tried to do that, and because of that, they suffer embargo and they continue to suffer the embargo. Haiti tried to do that when they got an independence, when they took their independence on their own in 1802, 1803. They are suffering from that now because what's going on? Because they took their independence and tried to create a country in their own eyes. That was a problem for the French, and up to today, Haiti continues to suffer, and that is what has defined countries like Cuba and Haiti as against countries like Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad that got their independence through ceremonies and preserve the European identity. These other countries that were the same, so they suffered a different fate. Their future don't look like how the other Caribbean countries that negotiated their freedoms and got independence within the mold of the master. You know? Frantz Fanon said, no, we need to start from something new, a blank slate. Yet even as we acknowledge the damage wrought by colonialism, we must recognize that our history is not solely one of victimhood. It is also a history of triumph and resilience, stretching back to the civilization of Kemet, ancient Egypt, and beyond. While the Afrocentric paradigm centers Africa in the study of African peoples and their place in the world. So we So, and so again, let me say this again. While the Afrocentric paradigm, and we are contending for a Caribbean paradigm or a study of the Caribbean that looks at history from the below. The people who are affected by the very history that we are contending for are the people who are studying it and writing about it. So therefore, we are not distorted by European invalidation when we come to the study of Caribbean and to the world. But then that creates challenges for us as a people because our theology is also awash with European influence, European culture that have become synonymous with divine commands. The way of doing a thing has now become synonymous with a divine requirement. So that so that you have little Caribbean boys and little Caribbean girls resemble Jews, as or resemble Jews and Roman Catholics, and not people of African heritage. You see, the Jews, the Israelites today, as a people, their religion, their ideologies, their cultures centers the way their Jewish history, which is religious, which involved a lot of their religious history, which is a cultural way of life to preserve their way of life and their understanding of the world. It centers them. Their center is Jerusalem. The Europeans, their center is Roman, that which is Roman Catholic. Where's the people who are of Africa descent, the people who are, where is the African center? Where do Caribbean peoples and people of where is their center? The Chinese, the Asian man, their center, where is their center in the East? Where's the Caribbean and the African? Where's their center? Their center is supposed to be in Africa, but no. Africa has been bastardized. Walter Rodden talks about the underdevelopment of Europe, but in the ways he talks about underdevelopment of Europe, he is still not Afrocentric because he uses European ideologies, European standards, European patterns of way of seeing things to study Africa. If Africa is too agricultural and bucolic, it is underdeveloped. Why do we think it is underdeveloped? Because we're using European standards and European technology to apply and to apply a generalization on how everything else must be. So because Africa or certain part of the Caribbean does not have the kind of technology that that European countries have, then therefore they are underdeveloped. But who says that is the hallmark of development, or that is what Africa is to be? Now, when we develop a pattern, a way of understanding life that is centered in the African experience, to where the African was at its height, which was the time of Kemet, then we will have a different appreciation and understanding. But yet still, we are not taught to appreciate or to even look to Africa. We are taught to downplay Africa, and even within our laws, we have downplayed Africa. And where we celebrate Africa, it is said that that part of Africa was white, Egypt. While the Afrocentric paradigm centers Africa in the study of African people. Oh, and African religion, or religion that focuses and promotes that which is, or African identity, that is downplayed as That is black, that is dark arts, that's devil, that's the occult. While the Afrocentric paradigm centers Africa in the study of African peoples and their place in the world, Caribbean thought must grapple with its own complex hybridity. It cannot simply adopt Afrocentricity wholesale, but it must instead forge its own epistemology and axiology. One recognizes the intersections of African, European, Asian, and indigenous influences in the Caribbean experience. I ask you, is there an Afrocentric paradigm? I might say, yes, there is an Afrocentric paradigm. I mean, is there a paradigm? Is there a Caribbean paradigm like that of the Afrocentric paradigm? Yes, there is a paradigm. There's a pattern, a scientific way to how African people living in the Caribbean approach the world, approach themselves, approach society. Yes, there is, but it is not Afrocentric in the way that we know it, in the way Afrocologists, such as Dr. Mazama in the Afrocentric paradigm, talks about it. It is transcending, like Sarah Balakrishna's Afropolitanism, out of many one people. So the Afrocentric paradigm, as in Afrocology or Black studies or whatever today, is now helping to focus the student, the scholar, focus his mind, because they're trying to develop the discipline separated from history. African history as against world history, because world history can clash with African history, because world history also talked about African history, but the ways world history talk about the history of Africa, they don't talk about it in the ways that the African would talk about history. The African would talk about history not relying on Eurocentric paradigm or patterns. They rely on a pattern that is Afrocentric, that is true to the African himself, using African scholars, African books, African values, African worship, African this and that. And Africa is the center. Utilizing, so you'll hear people talk about Asante and Diop and Nehoshi, Kimani Nehushi. You don't hear that when you study world history. They talk about European historians and create a history from their perspective. So in this class, we want you guys now to start utilizing Caribbean authors, Caribbean and African authors, Indian authors, or authors who are of the subaltern. But yet, is there a paradigm? We said that out of many one people. But as I said to you, I still have a problem with out of many one people. Because we talk about out of many one people to mean Indian, African, Chinese, the Caribbean. We are multifaceted people, different experiences. But yet still, although we are multifaceted and we are out of many one people, it is only limited to a part of our experience. But our theology, our philosophy, our language, and the idea of elitism and so on and so forth is still awash with Eurocentric. There has to be a European validation. Out of many one people only talk about bodies and probably our rhythm and moves. But outside of that, our entire experience is validated by European tropes, European ideology. So that we even denigrate and look down on our own brothers and sisters and are willing to embrace those foreigners. We dare not bring the Rasta in our community or in our church, but we will bring the Jews in there, or the Roman Catholics, or the European, whatever the case is. While the Afrocentric paradigm centers Africa in the study of African people and their place in the world, Caribbean thought must grapple with its own complex hybridity. It cannot simply adopt Afrocentricity. It cannot simply adopt Afrocentricity wholesale,
but it must instead forge its own epistemology and axiology. When we talk about the paradigm, we're talking about it. We're talking about the metaphysics. So when we approach the study of anything, of course, we're going to ask some question of it. When you study society, you ask the question: in whose interest is the society set up? In whose interest? How it is set up? In whose interest? Who get the benefits? You look at what's going on in the world today. We'll get to that later. When you start what disciplines, academic disciplines involve epistemological analysis, an axiological analysis, metaphysical analysis, yes, cosmological analysis. So, what is the epistemological approach? That's what we're talking about in Caribbean studies, and you are getting where I'm going with this. As we talk about the subaltern, so on and so forth. History from below. So instead, so as I said to you, we have to have a Caribbean thought that cannot simply adopt Afrocentricity wholesale, but must instead forge our own epistemology. So we're not going to adopt Afrocentricity wholesale because we are still a people with mixed origins. Not just African, but we are also of European descent. But yet still the Africologists will tell you that the beginning of everything in the world is in Africa. Africa is the starting point. Africa gave the world civilization, and that is true. People are recognizing that now. But I believe that it has to be one that is transcending. But yet still, our African identity, the African part of us, have been so subdued and subjugated that in order for us to give it life, we have to completely downplay this European part of us and promote that which is African. We must recognize the intersection of Africa, European, Asian, indigenous influences in the Caribbean experience. We must appreciate all of that. African, European, Asian, and indigenous influences in the Caribbean. We have to have a Caribbean study that centers the Caribbean people's agency, starting not from oppression, from colonialism, but from resistance and victory. Every time, if you go up in school and you study Caribbean or Jamaican history or civics, now I heard that they're going to be teaching civics again because they had stopped teaching civics. Many of you may not know civics. I think they stopped it in the 2000s. Okay, by that time, we did civics. They were doing civics. It's great. Civics is almost like Caribbean studies or Caribbean thought, but civics was really good. But as I said to you, when you look at the civics or the Caribbean thought, we talk about the construction of Jamaica, but there is always that it started from the time of Columbus coming and dominating and dunning. We just use the word dunning the Arawaks, and then going to Africa and tearing those people and bringing them to the Caribbean. That's all we know. There's no sophistication to our history. That is not true. There's no religion. That's not true. There was no family. That is not true. In fact, Africa is what gave rise to the ways how Europeans arrange their family today. The understanding of religion in Roman Catholic religion and in many religions, the way, and even in Christianity, our understanding of religion, the understanding of our eschatological understanding of life comes from a Platonic Socratic ideology that has been influenced by Kemet, by African influence from the time of Kemet. But we need a Caribbean paradigm that seeks to reclaim a sense of identity that is neither derivative of African nor European, but that is uniquely Caribbean. One that is probably what Sarah Balakrishna talk about, Afropolitan and Afropolitanism. But it has to be one that appreciates the African as well as the Asian and the indigenous influence and the European one. Moving forward, the Caribbean paradigm must therefore move beyond the binaries of black and white, colonizer and colonized. It must seek to articulate a philosophy of victory, a worldview rooted in the celebration of our cultural hybridity, historical resilience, and intellectual creativity. As we delve and dive deeper into the semester, we will explore these themes, asking what it means to reclaim our narratives and what frameworks best suit the study of a people and a place born of unique challenges and possibilities. So let us critically engage, question, let us critically engage, let us question and reimagine. By the end, we may not only answer whether there is a paradigm for Caribbean thought or Caribbean studies, but we may help to create one that resonates with the realities of our own time and place. So let the exploration begin. And I'm looking forward to this journey with you guys. And we have much to say about this. So welcome to Caribbean Thought. I will be your professor. And the text for the course is Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance. Chantel will talk to you some more about that. It's available. You guys will have to get the text to go through this course. We plan to delve into it a little bit, especially when you have China investing in Jamaica so heavily and Donald Trump telling the Chinese that they need to get out. And I asked the question, does that bode well for Jamaica? What will the relationship be like between Jamaica and the US, given the relationship that China has and what's going on between China and the US? That is a question for this class. That is a question for every Caribbean, and I talked about it on my podcast. The fact that Caribbean is heavy, that China, please remember in the 1960s, Jamaica had a lot of investment. But where is the investment? Then our textbook talks about that. China and Singapore and Jamaica. Singapore and Jamaica were at the same level. We had anywhere between 5.2 and 5.6 GDP growth per annum. But between 1957 and 1960, so 3. And by the 1970s, Jamaica's GDP, Singapore GDP far exceeds that of Jamaica. And of course, and then of course, we have gotten investment from the US that has through the IMF and the World Bank. That has not helped the Jamaica. The Caribbean, benefited from the preferential banana agreement between the Europe and the Caribbean countries. That ended after the US created NAFTA and created the WTO, and then have the WTO dismantled the preferential agreement that the UK had developed to help develop the Caribbean initially. That ended because the US had their investors develop agricultural lands for banana. And when they finished, they wanted a place to sell the banana, of course, and they were always out for themselves. That's the world, though. That's how the world works. We must learn from that. We must learn from this, but we must also learn from what's going on in Russia and China, in Russia and Ukraine. Because Russia is at war with Ukraine, because although Russia gave independence to all these countries, Ukraine is within the Russian space, world-dominated space. Please remember, we live in a world order, and we have the US control one section of the world order, China control one section of the world order, Russia controls one section of the world order, and they're all rivals. And Russia is invading Ukraine today because another superpower has come into Eastern Europe to do business with Ukraine that a rivaling country to Russia. That was a problem, and Russia asked Vladimir Zelensky to discontinue the relationship with NATO and the US, and he did not, and that has created the problem in Ukraine today. Now, when you think about Donald Trump and the relation and how he is and the relationship that Jamaica has with China, and the fact that China has now come into American dominated space in the backyard, doing business in the backyard of another superpower, we're gonna have to, as Jamaicans, ordinary Jamaicans and politicians, have to have a discussion. These are the discussions that as a people we need to have, as a country we need to have, and this is what the government must do before they engage in agreements like these, because then at the end of the day it comes back to bite us as a people. Does it augurs well for us, for Jamaican and for the Caribbean to do business, especially Jamaica and where it is positioned to do business? And not only that, you have China doing business and is right in the backyard of the US in Jamaica. And then you have Russia that was doing training and have some of their ships in Cuba. Russia and China in American superspace, in American space, that is a problem. And already the US have levied embargoes against Cuba. And so what will Donald Trump level embargo against Jamaica? What would the relationship be between Jamaica and the US going forward? Donald, we had a very good relationship with Biden and Kamala Harris. Of course, will we benefit from that same? Will Jamaica and the Caribbean benefit from that relationship going forward, given the fact that we have a Donald Trump who is president, whose ideas about the world goes back to the 1950s, okay, when America was at its height, or whatever the case is. He wants to rename Mexico as the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. He wants to take over Panama and wants China to leave the Panama Canal. Okay, this is interesting times in the world, and as a class and as a country and as a people, we have to think about that. And the book Neoliberalism, your textbook, is a historical book because it talks about a history, a socio-economic, political history of the Caribbean that was defined by aid and how that has come to bite us, defined by a certain investment that has not augured well for Jamaica, or did not bode well for Jamaica. Okay. What about the other Caribbean countries, Barbados, Trinidad, and so on? Have they opened up their economy to the kind of investment that Jamaica that is going on in Jamaica? What is the trade-off, the economic trade-off in Jamaica with these investments? How is Jamaica benefiting from that right now? What can we learn in terms of the payoff? How much time we have to pay? What is the interest rates and so on and so forth? Does it resemble that of the 1980s and 90s with the IMF and the World Bank and so on and so forth? Those are some of the questions we'll have to ask ourselves. Okay, so guys, welcome to the class, and we are out for a ride. We also want to talk about voodoo and obia, and what are our attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs and traditions, and what are the attitudes of Afro-Caribbean traditions in your community, in your church, and why do you have these ideas? Where do they come from? Are they fear, and are they commensurate with a history of African tradition that focuses on healing and protection? Those are some of the questions you have to ask yourself in this course, in terms of how you practice worship, how you practice your sociology, how you practice your guidance and your counseling and your social work. Is it one that embraces an Afrocentric paradigm, or one that still continues to promote Eurocentric ideologies over one that is African? Or is it one that is, as what Sarah Balakrishnan talked about, an Afropolitanism? Those are some of the questions you ask. We did an interview and had Shelley Weeks from the Period Poverty Foundation. I can't remember her foundation, ending period poverty. We had her in the class. She talked about the problem of ending period poverty. She talked about the fact that because the church is so involved in education in Jamaica, her organization fight to end period poverty was difficult, because when you think that the church should have been helping them to end period poverty in Jamaica, it was hard because the church has a masculine posture. They don't agree with the talk. They don't agree with talking about um, uh, 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 menstruation and masculinity and femininity and sexuality with their boys and so on and so forth. And so so that was difficult for her. And of course, because that is a European ideology. But when you look at our our African heritage talks about mother of the gods, father of the gods, because it was always an understanding that the mother of the gods was either mother, was either male or female. The female can be the mother of the gods could be a man acting a dual role, performing a dual role, or the role of a woman, a female male god, a male female god. But the point I'm making is that the historical understanding is that we had not always lived in a society where women weren't excluded from leadership. Okay, that women weren't the understanding of the way we think about masculinity as being exclusive in a society. They come from a European understanding. Okay, that has not always been the understanding of the African, which we are part of that experience. And so these are some of the new understanding we have to think about when we come to the course. The course, as I said, will make you estranged from yourself, but it's geared towards getting you out of your bubble. Now, there are some thinkers. I said that the course surveys the history and philosophy of the Caribbean and how the Caribbean has emerged as a society in the shadow of colonialism and the emergence of neoliberal globalization. It examines the region's central ideological currents of 20th century political thought, covers broad topics. We already said that we're going to look at cosmopolitanism, Afropolitanism, African social philosophy, the Afrocentric paradigm, Afrocentrism versus Afrocentric and Eurocentric, colonialism, nationalism, Pan-Africanism, socialism, Marxism, feminism, democratic socialism, neoconservatism, neoliberalism, globalization, deconstructivism, critical race theory, strategy, and the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith, economic inequality and poverty. Among the thinkers and works that we will be considering in this course are Marcus Garvey, George Padmore, C.L.R. James, V.S. Naipaul, W. Benjamin, Foucault, Frantz Fanon, did I say Mazama, Walter Rodney, Fidel Castro, Michael Manley, Edward Seaga, Bob Marley, Come on, Brathwaite, the negritude movement. We're going to talk about what is negritude. What is negritude? Who is Edward Blyden? W.E.B. Du Bois. We want to talk about, I don't think I have W.E.B. Du Bois in here, but we'll definitely talk about W.E.B. Du Bois, because W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey had a beef. What was the beef? And that's why I tell you, when you study Caribbean thought, you can't divorce it from the civil rights movement and African American history, because a lot of the West Indian academics and a lot of West Indian people gave rise to the civil rights movement in America. In fact, Marcus Garvey started the first established political organization in the U.S., the UNIA, United Negro Association, and it's quite interesting. So one of the things that we would do in this course, we would read we're going to read selected readings in Marcus Garvey, but you don't have to read that now. W.E.B. Du Bois, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote the book Dark Waters, Voices from Within the Veil. He also wrote the book The Souls of Black Folk. Very good book. And he talks about the dark soul, or the soul of Black folk, and the idea of the veil, and how he view himself, or the Black person view himself, as sort of like a veil, and asking who is within the veil, especially when you are in a predominant a racial society that is dominated by white people, and the white race is the predominant race, and it's the standard. Of course, within Jamaica, it's, as much as it is slightly racial, there is still a level of elitism based on how closely how closely your proximity towards your assimilation of the white race or the European culture. Okay. We will read that a little bit. We'll talk about we will explore people like we talk about we'll talk about Marcus Garvey, George Padmore, C.L.R. James. C.L.R. James is amazing. Oh my God. C.L.R. James, the Black Jacobins. Talks about, here's a guy from Trinidad writing a book about Haiti, and it is a very refreshing book. Afroecologists will tell you that C.L.R. James was not Afrocentric, but he was not Afrocentric. But most Caribbean thinkers are not going to be Afrocentric. If anything, they're going to be cosmopolitanistic or Afropolitanistic in any sense, and out of many one people. But the idea of Afrocentrism is important. To be Afrocentric is important so that we can re-establish the preeminence of African values within the African people. And so to be Afrocentric is the ideal, is what one have to strive towards. V.S. Naipaul, we look at V.S. Naipaul, W. Benjamin, Foucault, Michel Foucault. No, if I say we're going to talk about Michel Foucault, you might say, well, that's not being Afrocentric because Michel Foucault is a European. But Michel Foucault, I will use Michel Foucault because his ideas, his postmodernist ideas, resonate with a critical understanding of Caribbean history. And as much as we are promoting Afrocentrism, we are still promoting a theology that is transcending, in the sense that God does not privilege a people over any other or a person over any other. He can use Kemet to give civilization to the world. He can use Kemet to create civilizations and religion in the world, or whatever the case is. So we will, as much as we will rely on Caribbean thinkers and writers. There are some writers like Michel Foucault, who's a critical thinker, whose ideas is profoundly important in my understanding as to the relationship between institutions and knowledge, and how a particular behavior is maintained in society. Because Michel Foucault will tell you, like, is against the law of thermodynamics, or David Hume, or the law or against the idea that, against certain natural laws, like Kant. Immanuel Kant would tell you that history is a result of the varieties history is a result of human circumstances and chance. So the circumstances of history has helped to determine reality and history. Hold on, please. Let me stop my camera. That's a very important point. Go ahead. That's a very important point. That's a very important point. I've come to shape. So history is a result. So in the sense that the reality of existence, of life, is not a reality that is entrenched in the world, in the sense that the reality of anything is not a reality that is, but it's a reality that we impose on it, on the thing. And then certain knowledge. So the knowledge that we have about society and about life have been impacted or influenced by circumstances in history that has helped to create the dynamics in society today. The way of history, the victors of history, their realities and their reality, their ideas and their realities have come to shape society today, one may say. Who are the winners and who are the losers? How have societal conflict in history come to give us a reality today? And now if there are losers and if there are winners, what is the reality of the losers? Or what was the reality? And what is their reality their reality today? The reality of the black man or the African or the people in the global south, their reality is a result of historical conflicts and circumstances where they have ended up the losers. And today, the life that we live, the life that the African live, is a life of defeat. But his life was never a life of defeat. His life was a life of victory. But for some reason, there is, when you look at history, we talk about colonialism. Colonialism is about theft. It's about control. It's about a fierce process that has led to the demise of a people and the promotion of a culture that has become the universe, that has been universalized and entrenched into institutions, and where we have created a knowledge base to suggest that is history. We will examine people like Fidel Castro, Michael Manley, Edward Seaga, Bob Marley, Edward Glisson and the Negritude movement, Homi Baba, who wrote The Location of Culture, and it is her work where we will talk about C.L.R. James and cosmopolitanism. Mike Davis talks about neoliberalism, and it is his work that has helped me to write my book on neoliberalism. Nelson and Novella Keith, who wrote the book The Democratic Origins, the historical origins of democratic socialism in Jamaica. They were professors at Temple University. We also talk about Stephanie Black and Jamaica Kincaid, who are feminists, who helped to write, gave a small place about Antigua, and then the movie Life and Death. I always share that film in the class. We will share that film in the class again. Garnet Roper, Rex Nettleford, the Jamaica Dance Movement, Professor, of course, and I said, and the professor's works, some of my essays, we'll peruse some of them. Themes will be drawn from a selection of contemporary newspaper, columnists, talk show hosts, and the ideas behind the major international agencies and institutions which have shaped post-independent policies. Each semester, the selections of thinkers and social movements to be, well, let's forget that. Let's scroll down to the next. The course also looks at the role of music, arts, and sports in carrying the spirit of resistance and in shaping and defining Caribbean identity. It examines the role of the collective Christian presence and suggests a public theology priority for the church in the region, but also considers opportunities that takes advantage of science and technology and leveraging social media and digital technology as a way to express these critical thinking and ideas. By the way, I was doing a class last semester at Temple in Africology, and I came upon a book. I came upon someone by the name of Edward Blyden. He was from the 1800s. very interesting. I'm going to share an article that I'm working on with you guys because he went to Africa. He went to Africa and wanted to become Africa. He wanted to be missionary to the missionaries. So they went to Africa in the 1800s, the church, to teach these Africans to be good Christian boys and to give them Christian books, and as if Africans don't have books and stuff. And while there, it's like a heavy-handed approach. While there, he said, wait, why do we need the Europeans to come and teach them religion as if they don't have religion and books and civilization and don't have an appreciation for religion and spirituality? So he said, we will. He said, instead of you white people coming down here to teach us from Europe to evangelize us or whatever the case is, whatever word that is used. As a black man in Africa, let us use African stories and African books and African values and because in fact the values and the ideas that was in Africa at the time wasn't even the African values that was there. Is that people have come and turned Africa black. The problem with Africa and the problem with the Caribbean is that we have turned African people into black people. And where they are not black enough, then religion comes and turn them even blacker. But black is associated with with things that are demonic and not good and the dark arts. And then they lift up that word and gave it to black people. Nothing black, no good. African people are black. Therefore, African people no good. And they do have religion and they do have language and they do have a system and way of doing things. But anyways, he was one of the first missionaries who came up with the idea of being a missionary to the missionaries, because instead of, he went to Africa and now turned around and wanted to evangelize and to teach the missionaries who were coming there to teach the Christian values and how to read and write. And he wanted to teach them African language and reinterpreting the scriptures in utilizing African identities, African cultures, and African traditions in the way they have always thought about religiosity and Christianity. Anyways, but the course examines the role of collective Christian presence and suggests a public theology priority for the church in the region. It also considers opportunities that takes advantage of science and technology. Now, what are the goals and learning outcomes of the course? We hope that you'll have an understanding of the outline of Caribbean history from slavery to the colonial period. Well, and I forgot, I'm changing that. An understanding of the outline of Caribbean history, not from slavery. That's originally, that was the origin. But now, because we are focusing on developing a Caribbean paradigm, a way of doing Caribbean studies that does not focus us on a position of oppression, but one that focuses us on a position that puts us in a position of victory, centers us on that which is truly African. What has come to shape the Caribbean today does not begin from slavery. Okay, it begins with seeing the Caribbean for what it was before colonialism, and seeing life in Africa from the time of Kemet, where we were giving the world civilization. So we have to now create an outline of Caribbean history from so there we go. So what are the goals and learning outcomes? That students will have an understanding of the outline of Caribbean history from the time of Kemet to slavery, the Taino people to the colonial period, up to the colonial period. Students will understand the impact of that history on current reality, understand and appreciate the influence of key historical and current figures, understand and appreciate how the history of Caribbean shape your own personal history, I'll ask, what is your history? How far back can you go? You won't do that for next week class, but the following week I will ask you to do that. Start thinking about your own roots, your own history. How far back can you go? Do you begin, okay, do you begin with, and some of you may have a European side as well, but and some of you relish the idea that my father, I have a Scottish, my grandfather is Scottish, my great grandfather is Irish, and that's it. But when we talk about the African side of our history, very little is known, or we are not as bright-eyed. But what is your history? Some of you have maroon in your history. Some of you can go back to your mom, your grandmom, but after that, it's like it's complex, it's jaded. You're hearing various stories here and there. Why is that so? I want to know if that's the case with you guys. Okay, start thinking about your history. Where will you know about your history? Not by just doing a DNA study that uses a scientific European American way that relies on limited DNA samples in the world to trace your history. How can you rely on DNA study alone that draws sample of your blood that matches you with DNA? Do we have, well, I mean, well, fine, fine, yes, they can do that because they can get samples of people from back in the days and they can probably construct a DNA. But you notice when they do DNA testing of Caribbean people, they are always, well, fine, they're always black. I mean, they go back to African and white people. But what about indigenous people? Are Caribbean people related to have any connection to the indigenous people in the Caribbean, the NATO people? Some of us may have some relations to the Maroons on our mother's side or our father's side. We come from Baito or some of them place. You have some relations to some of these people, the Maroons. Do you know anything about them? Um, do you know anything about the Maroons and Maroon history? How are the why do we have Maroons? How do we come to have Maroons today? Is it from the 1650s when the Spanish had fought the British and they freed some of these Maroons? Who are these Maroons? Where did the Spanish get these Maroons from? If we never had slavery and weren't steeply involved in it, where did they get some of these Maroons from? Some of these people who they had enslaved and released. Many of them were local, were indigenous people who were released. And when the Europeans came, they were already marooned. And the Africans, and please remember that African sailors started coming to the Caribbean and were already intermingling, and they had left people there. So, and you don't much, not much is known of some of that, but when you start to study history and look at the archives, you have writings, and now they are finding excavations of black people in the Americas, which suggests that there were some black people here from before the time of Christopher Columbus, and that there was heavy travel. There were, well, not heavy travel, some traveling that took hundreds of years. People, you'll find bones of people who seem to be related 200 miles apart, 300 miles apart. Anyways, we have to understand the personal background of influencers and thoughts and its impact on their thinking. The very same people that have come to create the ideas that we have today. Where did they get what were their influences? Who influenced Bob Marley? Who influenced Louise Bennett? Was she Afrocentric, or was she Eurocentric? Um, all these ideas. I mean, our church leaders and founders, where did they get their ideas from? Um, Analyze and evaluate the actions and ideologies of select thinkers. Appreciate their personal responsibility to advocate for vulnerability in Caribbean societies. We want you guys to appreciate the role of public theology in shaping thought and addressing issues of oppression and exploitation in the Caribbean. How do we begin to address issues of oppression if even within our own theology, you find oppressive tendencies and teaching, one that oppress women or whatever the case is in some places, people may say. We hope that students will be able to connect their personal story to the story of the region. We hope that students will be able to utilize film to dissect and unveil the Caribbean story in relation to the global dynamics of the world. I said to you, Life and Death was one powerful film that has helped to shape my economic understanding. Well, it helped to prick my economic drive and this wanting to study our society and not to take anything for granted. We want students to be able to, well, we hope that you will submit a final essay paper that is well researched and part of current thinking among young academics. Now, the the young there's no the final it's not really a final research paper. What I will ask you guys to do is I will put you guys in groups and I will ask you guys to submit group work reflecting on our research, the changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. We will talk some more about that, but the idea is for you to formulate a group amongst yourselves and to discuss the question, discuss the essay, the survey that we have, looking at the change. What are your attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs? What are your attitudes towards African traditions? What are your beliefs? What is your position? Do you believe that is it a positive one? Is it a negative one? Do you believe that African tradition should be part of the Jamaican experience? Do you believe that it should be made legal? Um, what has given rise to your position? What are people saying in your community? You probably give out some questionnaire and ask them themselves, what is your position towards Afro-Caribbean belief? Has it changed over time? Why has it changed? Why has it not changed? So on and so forth. And then of course you could ask them demographic question. Where do you go to church? What is your political views and stuff to see if it's their education, their exposure to learning, their political views, their exposure to travel. And to me, they might have influenced them and as well. Those things, their views about church and God. And so on and so forth. We will talk more about that. We hope that you'll be able to use digital technology to transmit your critical thinking, develop podcasts, develop blogs. So I'm asking you guys to write reflection papers, reflecting on some of the classes, some of the readings that you have. You won't the first assignment you will have to do is to reflect on the paper that's in academia.edu, the Afrocentric Paradigm by Dr. Mazama, which 3, 4, 45. Mazama, where she talks about the Afrocentric paradigm. You guys will read that before we meet class next week. You will also, in the meantime, try and get a copy or access to Neoliberalism Book 1. Neoliberalism, and you will read the preface of that book as well. So there are 2 things that you will do before we meet at class next week. One, you will read Mazama's Afrocentric paradigm. So you will now start thinking about a paradigm towards the study of disciplines, towards the study of life, based on the discipline that you are in. When you are in a particular study, there's a discipline, there's a modus operandi or a paradigm which helps to establish and exceptionalize the discipline or the course you will do, and you will learn about that. You guys will read the Afrocentric paradigm before the next class, And you will also you will be prepared to have a discussion in class about what is the Afrocentric paradigm, what is it, what it is not, what is the confusion surrounding the Afrocentric paradigm, because we can't have a full discussion about a Caribbean developing a paradigm to the study of Caribbean thought or Caribbean studies without first understanding what pertains to a paradigm within a discipline. And the best way to begin to thinking about that is by thinking about a paradigm that already exists within Afroecology, the Afrocentric paradigm. Because as Caribbean people, we are part of that Pan-African identity. And why the Caribbean transcends the Afrocentric paradigm, because the fact that because our African identity has been so shrouded in corruption and has become so bastardized, it behoves us to focus and to pay special attention, more attention on Africa as the center rather than Europe. How does Dr. Mazama perceives us to now begin to think about this paradigm? She also talked about, after having been exposed to the forces of nature and the forces of life that has corrupted a people, what must we do next? That's for you to decide. We hope that you'll be able to connect your personal story to the story of the region. Not just see yourself as Jamaican, but seeing yourself as Caribbean people who are part of a history of, yes, of oppression and struggle and resistance, but who have always utilized your the indomitability of the African strength to overcome. What is that of this indomitability? That's why it behoves us to start thinking about Africa in its truest sense from the time of Kemet, which we won't have time to focus on that, but we will brush ourselves with it. We hope that you will develop a lens within which to analyze texts and make conclusions about life. That part is so important, because I'm repeating myself here if you don't know. That you develop a lens. There we go again. A modus operandi, a paradigm that is separate and apart from European, because we're not European people, okay? And you might say we're not African people either. However, we are people of African ancestry and descent whose every essence and life has been influenced and shrouded and corroded with that African experience. And how we move and some of the things that we do is part of that, the DNA that is all encompassing and persistent. Yet we downplay it. And that downplay is maybe part of that abnormality that has come to define the African in his society. We talk about Sigmund Freud, that talks about the psychoanalytic theory. Frantz Fanon, that also talk about this psychoanalysis of the colonized man, and how the relative depravity of societies that's dominated by Black and brown people comes from the development and the predisposition of an abnormality that is born from a psychology that has been corrupted. When you study psychoanalysis, we talk about when you have negative experience then you push it to the back of your brain. But if you don't deal with it, that's going to create a problem. But the African man is not only have a history of negativity, a history of strife, but he also come from an experience from the time of Kemet. So within his DNA is sophistication. Within his DNA is religion and family and tongue, yes, and technology that has been stolen and corrupted. Okay, within his within his experience is one that has been corrupted, and where colonization meets where sophistication and civilization meets with colonization, a violent colonization. All of that has come to impose itself on the experience of the African, who now lives or is dispersed all over the world in hybrid forms. So that the idea of himself and how he or she is portrayed in the world is one that lacks the truest and the purest essence of an African waiting, who want to continue to add life to the world, and not only for himself but for his people and where he is. But it begins by developing a lens, a paradigm, a perspective that is free of corruption. Students will be exposed to the Afrocentric paradigm, African civilization from the time of Kemet, and the study of Africology, applying it to their Caribbean studies. You cannot do Caribbean thought and Caribbean studies without contending for a paradigm that is Afrocentric. But we will not stop there or rely on it, because, as I said, we are people who are of the subaltern as much as we have African ancestry. We are people who have become hybridized with European biology running through our veins. Some of us. That although that but as much as the European running through our vein is 1% and 2% and 6%, it is what has come to rule our lives. That is the yardstick through which we view the world. Our European, the Europeanization of the world is what, okay. But then maybe part of the problem why we do not know, we have not embraced or know how to utilize a lens that is African or that is uniquely Caribbean, which includes African, is because we have limited understanding as to the ways of Africa. Or we have been so brainwashed in a way by our masters to associate African with the dark arts and that which is Satan, especially within a society that is dominated by a religion that promotes whiteness and the color white, and anything white is associated with godliness and virtue, while anything black, which is African, is associated. So no matter how much we baptize and so on, we always are demeaned by that blackness, by that Africanness. So we don't want to have an African center. We want to divorce ourselves from anything African, any language that we may have carved out of our African experience through the corruption, any religion, any practice, any ideology, any music, whatever it is may be. We have become so corrupted, and we have and they have so bastardized that which is African, that which is part of our identity and our experience. But we will expose you to but as I said to you, people, because of limited understanding, people have limited appreciation to the beauty of Africa and what it means. African civilization from the time of Kemet and the study of Africology, applying it to Caribbean studies. We hope that you'll be able to do that. But we'll provide you with resources and tools as to where you can access some of this information, because we won't, this is not the course. This is not, we don't have time to go through this, because some of what I'm sharing with you, many people don't know this. It is only at the collegiate level, it's only at the PhD level, maybe, that you might hear some people mention an Afrocentric paradigm, or within post-industrial experience. But my job as a professor is to be true, okay, too, as a Caribbean academic who wants the Caribbean to grow, and to provide you guys with all the information that will help you to make a determination in terms of how you practice your academics. We hope that you will develop an understanding of Afrocentrism versus Afrocentric and Eurocentrism. What is the difference? We will talk about that when we start to talk. When I want class, I will come to class and I will provide you with a critique of Sarah Balakrishna Afrocentrism, and it is therein you will come to understand the difference between Afrocentrism and Afrocentric. Students will develop a uniquely Caribbean approach to global challenges. Sorry for my spelling. It's awful. Students will trace their roots. Say, for example, we talk about students will develop a uniquely Caribbean approach to global challenges. Fine. We have to contend with global challenges in the Caribbean. What is going on in the world is going to affect Jamaica. We are a vulnerable country. The Caribbean, we are vulnerable. The 1970s oil crisis affected the Caribbean in the ways which has created our economic position in the world today. And so therefore we have to consider world crisis, world issues. We can't be insulated, or we will be isolated. What's going on in China is something that we will discuss in this class. In Jamaica and China, the Chinese investment is something that we will discuss in class. What? Okay, so that's the learning goals and learning outcomes. We continue. We want you guys to develop a critical thinking, tell your own story of the Caribbean. We want you to examine issues of identity, color in relation to Caribbean history. Explore poverty and inequality in the Caribbean as a direct result of neoliberal globalization. Develop your thinking and writing towards developing a Caribbean perspective. Very important, a Caribbean perspective. Trace the story of your own families as far back as possible. We said that already. Relate your personal history with the Caribbean history. Critically examine its impact on your family background. Critically analyze and rethink the perspectives of key Caribbean and diaspora thinkers and analyze their credibility for today and the future. Examine the role of religion in the defense and repudiation of slavery. Discuss ways in which society and you, the student, can advocate and act on behalf of the vulnerable and oppressed, given the oppressive cultures that we find ourselves stemming from even a theology of oppression. Discuss the church and your role in challenging structural injustice. Articulate your perspective on the Bible's relevance to the Caribbean context. Explore U.S.-Caribbean relations in shaping Caribbean and its diaspora, and know the difference between Afropolitanism and cosmopolitanism, global South and global North, neoliberalism, neo-capitalism, capitalism, and pseudo-communism. Expand your understanding of Caribbean culture with African groundings and perspectives. Consider the question, is there any hope for the Caribbean and Jamaica in light of Western capitalist penetration in the global South? You're going to have to consider that question, a very important question, which I will revive. I probably will ask it. Oh, shoot. We want you to begin to explore mediums to express your thoughts via social media platforms, podcasting, YouTube, writing letters to publishers, and blogging. We want you to do that. We give you extra mark for that. We will do lectures, digital and multimedia presentations, guided group work, weekly journals and interaction papers, essays and quizzes, cinematic film presentations, surveys, and site visits. In terms of assignment and graded work, Attendance is very important. If you cannot come, you cannot leave the class as you like. Please let me know if you're going to leave the class ahead of time. You cannot come to class when you feel like. If you're going to be late, more than 15 minutes late, please let Chantel know ahead of time. She's going to be managing the um uh the register. Um, we said we're going to have weekly interaction paper. The weekly interaction paper will not be from these. You will have to. We will update it. Next week you will write a reflection paper reflecting on Mazama's Afrocentric paradigm. Right. I need a two-pager. Just a two-pager reflecting. Now, I don't tell you how to write a reflection paper. I'm not going to tell you how to write the reflection paper. I just want you to write a reflection paper, 2 pages. I want to see how you write. I want to learn how all of you write. So the homework, I'm not telling you how to write it. I expect you guys to know how to write reflection paper at this level. However, I understand that many of you may not know how to do it, and every professor might differ. However, I just want to see where you are, what level you are at, and how your ability to make critical analyses or analysis, to provide commentaries on issues. And so I want to get an understanding. I want to see what approach you take, what lens you use, what paradigm or what philosophical perspective you take, or theology as you approach the Afrocentric paradigm. You want to part of your conclusion would be, do you appreciate the Afrocentric paradigm, or is it something that you have never considered, that you would thought to consider? A conclusion is not a summary of what you have reflected on. A conclusion could be a point for consideration that you are left with at the end of reading the Afrocentric paradigm. It could be something completely different from all that you have said in a paper, just so you know, when you do a conclusion. Um, or the conclusion um, could be the result of your logical deliberations in your reflection. Okay, but write a reflection on Amma Mazama's Afrocentric paradigm, where she defines the Afrocentric paradigm, what it is, and in defining what it is, she says what it is not. Now, when you come to class next week, we can have a discussion about what is Afrocentric paradigm. Do you think that we can have a paradigm in a Caribbean paradigm that resembles that of Afrocentric? Do you agree with her comments? What is she adjudicating for? What are the characteristics of the paradigm? What are the lengths of it? What are the consequences of the paradigm? Some people went as far as to change their name from Kevin to Kimani Nehushi, using African names and some people change their hair. In other words, when in the 1960s and 70s, when people were embracing Black studies and Africanity and so on, and Afrocentrism, some people, some people go through a baptism when they become a Christian. They're baptized into Christianity and they are baptized. There are people who actually do a kind of baptism, not a baptism in water, but they change their name. You have a lot of these African Americans with and in Jamaicans, even in Jamaica, you have they don't use their same name anymore. They have some African name, some Swahili name, Nigerian name. How after you trace your history and come up and understand your history, some people say, "Oh, that's my history." They change the name to, or they add a name that is African. That's why we want you to trace your own history. How far can you go back? And then you might say, "Oh, I'm 1%, I'm 6% European." But can I tell you, what is your name? Your name is, you have a European name. Yet we are 60% African, or of African heritage, or whatever, or Indian, or whatever the case is. Yet some of us have a European name, especially the African side of us. Nothing to identify with the African and so on and so forth. But this is That is why the third week you get to trace how far back can you go. Trace your African roots. Talk to your grandparents, talk to your parents, talk to people who may have done ancestry.com. But as you know, I'm very skeptical about ancestry.com, extremely skeptical. There are some people called the Urban Indian Heritage Society. Maybe we can have them back this year to come and talk to us about heritage, our heritage, and how there are new findings that look at Africans and Black people in the South and in the Americas and in the Caribbean and in Jamaica. There's some of them are direct descendants from the Taino people. Many of them are not African in the sense that how we thought. Many of them didn't come to the Caribbean through slavery. Many of them are already here. Maybe some of them came through the early sailors that came here. What do you know about your history and so on and so forth. And then when you start to read Diop's African civilization, the origins of African civilization and history, uh, and Ashanti's African civilization, then of course we will do that. So one class we will read Afrocentric Paradigm. The thing is, this class never had much literature in that focuses on African history, African heritage. We have African books, but even those books relied heavily on European understanding of history and heritage. Now, what we are doing is that we want to move away from that. We're going to introduce you to Afrocentric paradigm, what it is, because we want to develop a paradigm, a lens, a perspective in the study. It doesn't have to be Afrocentric. It doesn't have to be follow Africological, American Africological paradigm. We can create our own paradigm within this course. Okay, and we could, at Jamaica Theological Seminary, we can set the stage for the study of Caribbean studies all over the Caribbean. At the end of this course, we would have created a journal that focuses and highlights that come up. Okay, if we have a paradigm, a Caribbean paradigm to the study of Caribbean, what will it look like? Having been exposed to the Afrocentric paradigm and so on, what will it look like? Okay. What are the perspective? What is the epistemological framework? What is the metaphysical idea? What is the axiological and the cosmological foundation and underpinnings that we will utilize? What is the history? What can we rely on? We will rely on cerebral Krishna's Afropolitanism. We will rely on. We will also include C.L.R. James, Jacobins, and Franz Fanon, Tabula Rasa, Wretched of the Earth. Will we include um, uh, uh, um, um, cerebral Afropolitanism, cosmopolitanism, Ian Homi Bhabha's cosmopolitanism, or a history from below, because we also have Eastern or Indian influence in the Caribbean. Okay, not just African. So we can't just develop an African paradigm. Then we have to think about a paradigm that is Afropolitanistic, one that relies not just on African identity, but also one that also embraces Eastern cultures, because the East has also played a part in developing the Caribbean, while also there are also the nativist culture. Okay, the Arawakan people, and some of them are still in the Caribbean today. Do we also include that in our study? And if we include that into our study, then what will that look like as against the Afrocentric paradigm? This is good. This is major. Can we lead the way in a study that looks at the changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs? Okay. Can we lead the way towards adjudicating and advocating for a Haitian-led solution to the problem in Haiti? Which, okay, can we, for once and for all in this semester, finally complete the conversation and the project that we are contending for at JTS in Caribbean Thought? Okay, that promote a Caribbean study that relies heavily on a Caribbean paradigm. One, okay, and so we can develop a journal that focuses on that. Can we develop and finally complete a study, okay, that looks at the changing attitudes toward Afro-Caribbean belief, what it is now, what was it then, how is it changing, okay, why is it changing, why it is not changing, and how can a study of Afrocentric paradigm and Caribbean thought help to facilitate and preserve African dynamism and history against Eurocentric attack? Yes. And thirdly, how can we advocate for our brothers and sisters throughout the Caribbean, like that of Haiti? Okay. How can we, that is advocating for, advocating for a Haitian-led solution? How can our petition bear fruit? What has been the progress on our petition? So these are some of the questions we want to contend with as well in this course. Attendance and participation is paramount. Midterm papers, we will have a midterm paper or we may not, depending on how you're doing in the course. The midterm paper, if we do a midterm paper, it would be a reflection paper, okay? A reflection paper, or if you it will be a reflection paper. It will be a reflection paper, or it could be a proposal of your group work or initial consideration of your group work. But what is important is the reflection paper. You may get a midterm paper, but it's to provide a reflection of your group work so far. There's a final research paper, which is the final paper for the group work, which involves the study looking at the changing attitude toward Afro-Caribbean beliefs. Right, and that paper must be written utilizing a Caribbean paradigm. And so, of course, you will say in your final paper that we will utilize what we have learned in the Afrocentric paradigm or the Caribbean paradigm to present our findings and our perspective. You get an extra credit if you write a 500-word essay on the following topics. Extra credit. You know what? No, no, no. You're not getting any extra credit for that. If you can write extra, if you write something that is worthy of the class, you get extra credit. If you submit a paper or letter, you get credit. If you and one of your letters was published in the Gleaner, you get double credit. The score of the final examination is always determined out of 40%. Even if you score full, if you have 100, if you get 100% in the coursework, the final semester, if you fail fail the final exam, you fail the course. So you must pass the final exam. And the final exam is usually a compilation of all your work, all the things that we have done. Okay. And a lot of what we've done is on YouTube. This course is available on YouTube. We past lectures, so it's a lecture series. 2023, the semester 2 and summer is available on YouTube. So same thing with the 2024, and then and they are all available in trailer form and in 3-hour format, 2-hour format, the entire classes. So some of those classes you might find interesting. This semester is going to be different every year. The format and it's almost the same. It's almost the same, but a lot of my approach is different, and there was always some added version. I always add something to the course. Last semester, I never talked about Afrocentric paradigm. It was more looking at the research changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. Before that, I talked about Haiti. This semester, we'll talk about toward developing an Afrocentric paradigm. Now, and I talk for class research, the changing attitudes towards Afro-Caribbean beliefs. What were they like then? What is it now? Is there a change? Why or why not? How attitudes affect and influence policy and behaviors. How attitudes affect policies and behaviors. See research proposal and initial study question here. So you can actually, in the syllabus, there's a link. You can just click on the link and it will take you, click on the link and then you go to open hyperlink. Once you click hyperlink, it will take you to the study and some reflections about what we're doing there. And the study was created by Jamaica Theological Seminary, Caribbean Thought class. We hope to wrap it up maybe the end of this year. And we hope that you'll be part of that. Your reflections will be part of that. The research study culminates in a final paper detailing your findings at the end of the semester. Okay. discussions and lecture topics, Caribbean thought, ideology, and philosophy. Some of the topics that we will go over includes the Afrocentric paradigm, Afrocentrism versus Afrocentric and Eurocentrism, African civilization and African spirituality, the challenge of identity and the issue of sexuality, poverty and inequality and opportunity, resistance and dilemmas of social power, the social origins of democratic socialism in Jamaica and the Caribbean, neoliberal globalization and the Black position, the global South and the global North dynamic, American penetration. The idea of penetration is important. And I'm happy I said that. I'm happy. Let me highlight this. The idea of penetration is important. The ability to penetrate and one's and how penetratable you are is a very important dynamic to understand when you start to study power, privilege, or colonialism and the history of the world. When you look at the Caribbean or the global South or African nations or African and Black and brown people, they are always in a position that makes them a vulnerable position that makes them open to penetration. They're always penetratable. When you study rape, incest, power, domestic abuse, domestic violence, a lot of that have to do with power and the ability of the man. And rape is an issue of power where you're penetrating. When you penetrate something, the person that is doing the penetrating has the power. The person that is receiving the penetration is the victim. The person is being victimized. The person, so the idea of, we talk about American penetration, Haiti and justice is important. And not just American penetration, who is doing the penetration in the world and who is on the receiving end. But at the same time, who is demonized in the world? The people who are being penetrated upon, the people who are being imposed upon, the weaker people, they are the ones in which society, the society we have, the world that we have today, we have draconian policies, immigration policies towards peoples whose nations and whose lives are always being penetrated. And we have policies that ensures the penetration of Jamaica and these other countries. But if America or Russia or UK or France is being penetrated, that's a problem. They pull out of WTOs and WHOs and NAFTAs and stuff if they feel as though they are being penetrated or imposed upon. The idea of penetration, the trope of penetration is important when you start to look at power. You look at how Jamaica or the Caribbean, how our economies over the years have been opened up. How we open up our economy, our dependency and our vulnerability. We open our economy. It's like our society only can grow and benefit when our legs are open. Our legs are always open. And our legs are open. You think about it in terms of prostitution as well, where we are willing to prostitute ourselves to a society that has created prostitution to the point where you have to prostitute yourself. You have to demean yourself. But the idea of penetration, who is doing the penetrating and who is being penetrated upon? Who is penetrated and who is penetrating? The global South is always being penetrated. The global North are the countries that's always doing the penetrating, and there are international laws that ensures for the easy penetration, or what we call the rape. The rape. And you find that when some women are being abused, or in some relationships, the weaker sex has been abused, they don't have jobs, they don't have stability, and so they feel like that they can't leave the relationship because of the position of lack. And so they stay in that violent relationship. Is that the experience of Jamaica? Is that the experience of the Caribbean? And I asked the question about the relationship between Jamaica and America, given the fact that China is now in Jamaica and Haiti is demanding China to leave Jamaica because they are in the US dominated space. The superpower in the Americas is the US. In the Western world is the US. And here we have an Eastern superpower that's at odds in the US, doing business in Jamaica in the US backyard. Then the problem with that is it's as if China is finding a way to penetrate itself into the US. That's a problem. The problem is the China superpowers cannot be penetrated upon because they are powerful, because their position, the idea of penetration becomes important, an important word or lens within which to view the world and the way in which how power is adjudicated. Science and technology, slavery, maroonage, emancipation, and humanization. We have to look at that. Nationalism, including the Haitian War of Independence, Cuban War of Independence, and the idea of irony. The idea of irony is very important. Nationalism and the idea of irony. What am I talking? What's that irony? We talk about that. What that have to do with anything with what we're studying? Because in the 1955, when the non-aligned countries, the colonized countries all came together to chart a way forward and envision and to create a manifesto of independent nations. When in the 1950s, 57, 58, when they were talking about when they were signing the Treaty of Chaguaramas and developing uh, uh, Caribbean integration and so on, the Caribbean countries weren't supposed to get independence individually. They were supposed to be an independent nation. The CARICOM was supposed to be one nation in a sense. But then nationalism gave way to a kind of unity that was necessary to mitigate what was coming, because the world order that they were building was one where these 4, 5, 6 countries control various corners of the world, and all these non-aligned countries who are now independent still serve their interests, the interest of the superpower. Little did they know that OPEC was going to happen or the oil crisis was going to happen. Little did they know, but if they knew that, they would have advocated for an independence that was on a united front where they could now rely on each other. But because Jamaica go it alone, Trinidad went go it alone. When by the time the oil crisis happened in the 1970s, their equal shared independence and their go it alone mentality wasn't enough to withstand and to mitigate against the international economic crisis, which I believe was created because when you look at all the crises in the world and what happens afterwards and how that continue to maintain a world order and the status quo, then you'll understand what we're talking about, and we'll talk about that later on. We'll talk about independence and the Pan-Africanism, religion, social consciousness, and empowerment. Capitalism versus dependent capitalism. Yes, because I would say to you that many Caribbean islands are dependent capitalist countries, not capitalist, but dependent capitalist nations. What is dependent capitalism as against capitalism? What is socialism as against democratic socialism? Immigration and brain drain and American politics. We won't have John Anthony Castro. He was here 2 years ago, and he spoke with the class. He was running for president. He was a guest on my show. He came here twice. He was arrested recently, not too long ago, because another presidential candidate, he was running against Donald Trump, and he was popularizing Section 6 or Section 3 of the 14th Amendment about a presidential candidate or president cannot give aid or comfort to rioters, and he did that, and so his case was developing traction, and I don't know what happened. They derailed his case and came up with an accusation of tax fraud and throw him in jail. That's how they do things. And when you try to go against the grain, they do everything in their power to get you out of the way. That's what you call a counterveillance tactics. which I talk about in neoliberalism, countervalence. But he came to the class. He won't be at the class, but we will still talk about American politics. Maybe I'll have someone come and talk with us briefly about it. But I want to talk about immigration, and there is an article I wrote that's in my website, theneoliberal.com, published on the website in the Neoliberal journals, about that looks at immigration. You have to shift through hundreds of articles, but I wrote an article about immigration, and I talk about the yes, brain drain, but immigration provides an opportunity for us. But I also talk about what's going on in the US today. And if you go to the neoliberal.com, you hear me talk about Project 2025. What does that mean? What does that mean for the Caribbean? And I talk about America was losing its soul. America was and it was the determination that America would lose its soul by 2025 from a study that was conducted from 2009. Okay. And so they were preparing for Project 2025 to stop the bleeding, to stop America from losing its whiteness. Because America had become a white nation. And now we are hearing that by 2020, the majority will be part of the minority. In other words, the white people will come to the white race will decline and will give way to a new majority of black and brown people. That's a problem for America. That's a problem for a post-industrial country. And so there has been a policy that has been put in place to mitigate that or prevent the culture from changing, the demographics from changing. Okay, part of it is abortion, part of that is immigration, part of that, and so on and so forth. We'll talk a little bit about that, and the idea of immigration, and what's going on in America and how that affect the Caribbean today. I saw that also Starbucks is in Starbucks. Starbucks have 11, there are 11 Starbucks in Jamaica. Are they using Jamaican coffee or Starbucks coffee? That's a problem if they're not using Blue Mountain coffee. If that's not what's happening, they're using where they are here in Jamaica, and Jamaica is still sending hundreds of millions of dollars in royalties because we're using their Starbucks coffee. That's a problem. We want them to use Blue Mountain coffee. We're gonna have to start our own Starbucks or a coffee shop. But we're gonna call it's gonna be a coffee and bookshop. We're gonna call it um Bookstar or Star or Blue Mountain Cafe or the Neoliberal. The Neoliberal will have all those textbooks written by yours truly. And then you'll also have your coffee and book signing capabilities on weekends for people to do other stuff. And so and we only sell Blue Mountain coffee. All the coffee will be the Blue Mountain coffee. So that we don't have to send royalties overseas. The royalties stay here in Jamaica. Only ownership profits go to the US. But that's something for another day. Deconstructivism and critical history and philosophy in introduction. We'll have to talk about that. Regenerative agriculture. We talked about that one time. Regenerative agriculture. What cultures are going to regenerate? What countries are doing to regenerate the land so that it can create certain agriculture, certain crops, especially in certain places, to be able to feed the world, because right now the world, there's more mouths to feed than what the world is producing. That's something we can talk about. And that's about it for class for now. I was only supposed to talk with you for an hour, and then Chantel was supposed to take it over, but I went through the whole gamut today. And that is the syllabus for now. There's still some other consideration that you can this week 1, week 2, you can ignore it for now. Period pub. I said week 1, we're gonna look at introductions. You were supposed to introduce yourself. We didn't do that. The class, let's see, 3. Oh, the class is supposed to finish at 6, so we're almost out of time. So, and we didn't get to introduce ourselves, and we're supposed to put each other in group, but I won't have time for that. So what we will do is that next week we will ask you guys to introduce yourselves, plus you guys have a homework. Chantel, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here.
We need to put the students in groups. I don't know how we will do that. You will take care of that. Put the students in groups.
Okay.
Before we do that, any
So
questions?
I'm seeing 15 persons, even though we have 12 persons on class now.
Okay.
The article for Ama
Mazama.
the name is a bit Ama Mazama, right. I had to
Right.
send that in the group. the persons can read our article and then do the reflection paper for next week, as well as this discussion that will take place after for class next week.
Okay, great. All right, but welcome, guys. I always say to students when people come to the class, many people come to my class inundated and overwhelmed, the first class, because of the heavy substance, because of the reflections. And the reflections are, we use words such as neoliberalism. That in itself is heavy. Some people may say, but it's not. But we're academics, and the way in which we live in a world that has been created with complexities in a way to maintain certain privileges and order in the world. And so as academics, we have to unpack that. But you have to understand that the complexities in the world, and then we work together to unpack it. We will unpack these. At the end of the day, at the end of the class, you will appreciate this class fully. My job is not to overwhelm you. My aim is that you guys will all leave the class with something, and that you will all pass the class. Students usually pass my class. As long as you come to class and you apply yourself, you should pass the class. Students pass my class. I don't like failing students. My goal is that all of you will pass. I find that students fail this course because they don't, the exam, when they do fail this course, is the exam. If you pass the final exam, the final course or the exam, you will pass the class. If you do the course, you will pass if you do the final exam and pass the final exam, you will pass the course. You will pass the in-course part of the class because you will apply yourself. You will come to class, you will engage yourself, you will communicate with Chantel or myself. You will be excited about the subject matter. These are heavy stuff. You are correlating it back to life, your own life and society in general, so on and so forth. Okay. So please take advantage of the course. Take advantage of what you can learn. Apply it back to your own life. And I oftentimes tell people, don't think about passing or failing. If you think about passing or failing the course, you probably won't get anything out of the course. But if you open yourself and ask God to guide you and direct you, and to open your mind to his lead and to his promptings, and help you to get as much as you can, then you will get a lot. I'm telling you, you will. And Chantel can tell you about the class. I've taught her before, and she passed the class. She was among the person with the highest grades, and she got her bachelor's, and she's working on her master's, so and so on. So she is someone you can talk with. Now, I will leave her in charge of somebody had their hand up. Was it Heather? Who is it that had their hand up?
Sir, question. They're asking about the reflection paper next week.
Go ahead.
Sir?
I'm hearing. Go ahead.
There's a question in the group that's asking about when the reflection paper is due. If it's supposed to be sent before class next week?
Sure. Yes.
Before class.
Send everything to Chantel. Any assignment that you have, send it to Chantel. Chantel is the go-to person for everything. Okay, as it relates to sending her the material, she will mark the register, so on and so forth. She will tell me who come, who didn't come. She'll put you in groups. She will administer the WhatsApp group as well. She will communicate assignments, any updates or changes. The reflection paper is due a day before class. So if the class is Friday, please submit all your reflection paper by midnight on Thursday. So that Thursday in the daytime I can quickly review it. Okay. So the reflection paper again is to read Mazama's Afrocentric Paradigm. I need a two-page report on that. Please use the paper. Don't use AI to reflect on the paper. Reflect on the paper, and don't ask AI, hey AI, please produce a reflection paper on Dr. Mazama's Afrocentric Paradigm. 2 pages, double space, with a reference. Don't say that, please. You can do that and it will help you with that. I am versed on AI, just so you know. And I have all the technology that can make a determination. Just so you know, I help to train AI models. So some of the information that you may get about Caribbean thought and so on may come from what I have submitted in my training models of AI. So just be careful about that. However, you can brainstorm and then you can ask AI to organize your work. Write it and then say, hey, this is what I have written for my reflection as it relates to Mazama's Afrocentric paradigm. Please organize it in a 2-page academic paper, utilizing Caribbean. You could do that. And as long as you write it and then you ask AI to organize it, I'll take that. Okay. But next week you will present. Next week we'll have a discussion and I want to hear your comments on it. So not only should you be able to write, and then if you want to use AI to organize it and flesh it out, you can, but be prepared to have a discussion about it. I will expect all of you to be able to participate in the discussion about the Afrocentric paradigm. What it is, where does the paradigm come from? Okay, what are the aspects of it? Okay, and then we can make a determination as to whether or not we can have an Afrocentric paradigm within Caribbean studies. Okay, any question? We stop. Okay, no question. Again, 2 things you need. Read the preface of the book, Neoliberalism. I'll leave Chantel, you'll finish the class, so I'll leave you in charge to take care of marking the register, putting the people in group, and what else did I say? Talking with them about the book and about the article, how to get the article. Okay? All right. I'm going to step out from here, and if you have any further
Okay,
questions,
sir.
talk with Chantel.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, guys. Chantel, you can take over from here. Chantel, are you there? Chantel? 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 Hello? Are you guys hearing me?
Yeah, we hear you, but she's not on the platform. Maybe she her antenna failed.
She's probably having some technical issues. Chantel, are you there? She probably is talking and not realizing. I think she's having some problems.
Mr. McKenzie?
Yeah, Chantal, mixing up with Chantel. Go ahead, Chantel.
You are calling me the whole time or Chantel?
You know what? And you guys are mixing me up.
Okay, so Chantel is your TA. I'm just a student.
Right. So Chantal, you guys also need to have a class. Choose amongst yourself who is going to be the class liaison. Okay.
Okay. My question is, sir, is it a case where while you're lecturing, is it okay for any student to ask a question in the middle of your lecture, or we have to reserve all questions until after?
You know, usually I take questions while I am teaching. But there are times when I may not see you, or there are times when I might say, we'll hold your question until after. So yes, you can raise your hands in the middle. If I don't quickly acknowledge you, it could be that I'm making a point and I don't want to skip the point or miss the point. And so I would probably finish the idea and then I would say, okay, if anybody have a question here, and then I would probably have you. But usually we have conversations and you can ask questions in the middle. And sometimes I ask you to hold it, to make a note of it, and you can put it in the group, or you can ask it at the end of a point or a sentence or a particular section or something of the sort. So yeah. Does that answer the question?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, it does. It's just that, well, for me, I might have to send you an email because if there's Chantel, the email, because if there's a few points that I wanted to ask questions on where that's not clear, Then in the event of that happening, I'll probably just make the note of the questions and then forward the email to her. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, man, and going forward, we will I will have you guys. No, we want you to be more involved in the class. You should be able to ask questions during lectures and stuff. I apologize if I didn't take some of the questions initially today because I think I was on I didn't want to lose my train of thought, and so sometimes I might talk, and I have a tendency of doing that. Sometimes you might have to interject again, and sometimes I might miss it. So, but moving forward, I don't know. Chantal is still not in the class, but what it is that you wanted? Is there any pressing question you have that you wanted to ask me? You can go ahead.
There's quite a few questions, to be honest. You touched on the topic of Africans venturing into this section before Christopher Columbus. I wanted to know. My apologies. So I wanted to know a few articles or anywhere I could go to read up on that. Also, in terms of there's quite, as I said, there's quite a few that I have to go back and try to remember and make notes of it. But that was one of the things that jumped out at me. Also, when you were speaking on Africa's spirituality and the fact that the Europeans or the colonizers did not necessarily plan for us to learn how to read and write on our own, to read the Bible for our own, to know the things of the Bible so that we can educate ourselves. So those are some of the points that I was curious about. But as I said, I'll go ahead and send an email.
Yes, and thank you. Yes, and thank you so much. I will update the syllabus with at least 10, maybe 20 resources where you can, as it stands now, you don't really have much about African studies or African literature. As I said, because when the syllabus was constructed, we did not, or there wasn't a heavy reliance on African literature, because although we're doing Caribbean studies, there was still a heavy reliance on Eurocentric literature. I have those, and just so you know, for those of us who don't know, I'm doing my Doctor of Philosophy in Africology at Temple University, and I'm a strong Africological student, Africological scholar. So, of course, I have all the material that you would need and more, just so you know, lots of it. Some of it I have here in my office, and I'll have to bring, and I plan to, the next time I come to Jamaica, I plan to leave some more books in the library because I noticed I was in Jamaica, went on campus, I noticed you have limited literature that looks at African sociology, the Journal of Negro History, stuff like that. We don't see them. I will put them I will leave them there. I will be in Jamaica before the end of the semester. So that would be great. You'll probably get a chance to meet with me, pick my brain. I'm going to be having a lecture, an open lecture there in Jamaica. So probably you guys will maybe participate or can come. Looking at the Afrocentric paradigm, I have some literature that I will share with you guys. I'll put it in the syllabus. Especially the first thing we have YouTube. I have some YouTube videos I'm going to share with Chantal. I like that Chantal is asking me about these things. It shows interest, that she's highly interested in learning and revisiting her African heritage and the information that's there. I am the person you want to talk to, okay, about these things. I will send them to you, Chantal. If there's more that's not available on the syllabus that you want, I'll send them over your way. Diop, Ashanti, Negritude, Edward Blitten, so on and so forth. I will send them to you, okay? Stuff available. But for now, I want you to focus on reading the Afrocentric paradigm. You will find that the woman who writes Afrocentric paradigm, Dr. Mazama, is actually the chair of the Africology department, a very good friend of mine and my professor in the Afrocentric paradigm. And we have lots of materials, and we are hoping that you students, you guys are the first students to be exposed to the Afrocentric paradigm in Jamaica. The first students in Caribbean studies and Caribbean thought to be exposed to Afrocentric paradigm in Jamaica. So just so you know, it's your first. So no one has ever been exposed or have the training or a class that looks at a paradigm that is Afrocentric. Even when you do Caribbean studies and Black history, they're still using European books. Okay, and they've never, even within America, we are talking about now facilitating the teaching of Afrocentric paradigm, which we are realizing now is very, very important within African communities. Okay, because people think that Black people, not or African people, I don't like to use the word Black anymore. African people don't dispose of their litter properly. African people are not educated and smart. African people don't do gardening and have beautiful stuff. It's as if no, it's a white thing. If somebody Black do it, it's you what him act like him white. No, but actually, no, that's not true. Africans were always bucolic. They always believed to be one with nature and preserve the land and preserve. Okay, they were always that. They were always they always promote hygiene and being cleanliness was next to godliness. That was not some. That was nothing US. That was always African. That was taken from the African books, and now all of a sudden it's now synonymous with that which is white. You know, these are some of the things I'm telling you. I have been blessed. I give God thanks for some of the things I know now. I am 45, 46 this year. I'm going to be 46 this year. And I am doing my doctorate. And it wasn't until I started doing my doctorate at Georgetown University and my doctorate at 3 years ago, and then now my doctorate at Temple, that I learned some of these things. I didn't know anything about the Afrocentric paradigm, just like you. I didn't know much about the neoliberal. I mean, there are so many things that you will learn in this class that I will share with you. We didn't know that, some people didn't know that African sailors were coming to the Caribbean before Christopher Columbus. Chantel is going to know, where can I find that information? That's the thing with this class. You will be exposed to the resources and to the tools where you can find some of these things. But not now. I'm taking my time with you. I will send you, and later on next week, I will populate the syllabus with the additional reading in in terms of African civilization, Diop, African paradigm, Ashanti civilization. I'm talking about in Egyptology and the River Nile people and what they found in the River Nile people and so on and so forth. Great stuff. All right. But I won't dilute it though. I won't exclude what I've always thought about Caribbean thought in this course. I will still utilize some of those literature, but I will expose you to a lot more African literature in the teaching of Caribbean studies, because that was what was lost in our study of Caribbean thought. Okay, to be true to Caribbean thinking and Caribbean thought, we cannot just continue to teach European values and ideology and being Eurocentric. I have to expose you to everything so that now you are already exposed to Eurocentric ideas and values. When you go to church every Sunday, when you go to primary school and everything, we were always exposed to that. Very little African literature. And anything African, we look down upon it anyways. It won't even come our way. Okay, but we're academics, and in this class, we will explore that, and then you can make a determination about that. Chantel, we will stop here. Chantal asked a very good question about where can she get some literature, African literature about some of the things that we're talking about. That explores African civilization, African history, the time of Kemet, the Asset Society, Osiris. I have those. Remind me to include that in the syllabus so that they can have copies of that. But for now, focus on the Afrocentric paradigm. I also have a video that you'll get to watch about the Nubia people and so on. And also, if you want some stuff, you don't need it for this course, but if you want to expose yourself to African sociology and Mugabe and so on, and the Journal of Negro History, I'm willing to share that with you. You don't need it for this class, but I share that with you if you want to open up your mind and start developing your own thinking and your own understanding and so on, to start passing it on to your children and your grandchildren and being true and appreciative of your African culture. Okay. All right. Edras have a question, but I have to go. I'm going to ask Chantel to just take all we're going to do right now, just take the register. Start thinking about putting we need groups. If there are 20 people in the groups, the students that we have here, we can put them in groups. And then any other student that's not here, they can be placed in another group. And then you can wrap up with them. Okay. All right. So I'll leave Chantal to wrap up here. And then I guess we can wrap up the class in 10 minutes. Let them not go beyond 6:10 or 6:15. Because all right, so we'll just wrap up in about 10 minutes. But thank you guys. Send me emails. I'm on the WhatsApp group as well. And I leave you in the capable hand of Chantel. Chantel, they said that they want to know if I'm gonna take questions while I'm lecturing. Yes, I will take questions. But sometimes Chantel may have to say, hey, Mr. McKenzie, there's a question in the group here. You can do that, okay? Because sometimes I'll be talking and talking and never stop. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Okay. All right. Take it over from here, Chantel, and there might be stuff about the YouTube channel I never talked about.
Okay, sir. All right, so good evening again, everyone. So about the reflection paper for next week, I sent the article in the group, on the WhatsApp group for you to read and do the paper on. Thursday that we're gonna need you guys gonna need the book, the neoliberalism, globalization, income inequality, poverty and resistance that was written by him. You can get a copy of the book from me or him. If you want a copy of it, it's I think so $50 US. Because you're gonna need a copy to actually do assignments and stuff like that. But you can also go on YouTube on Google to look at the prefix of the book. Read upon that because that is there. Also for the persons who I've already sent that article in the group. So all the persons who are just joining the WhatsApp group, I can resend by the article. They can be able to read from the article and do the reflection paper. Any questions?
Yes, quick one, Amanda here. Regarding the reading material, you stated that we can go to Google to research or read the prefix. Just to confirm, is the prefix sufficient, or you're saying that persons will have to purchase the reading material for this course?
There's the one you need to purchase, and that is the one that was written by Mr. McKenzie. The neoliberalism, globalization, income inequality, poverty and resistance. That's the name of the book. If you go on Google and research it, you can find it as well. Also, there are classes that
Chantal, can you slow down, please? You're speaking very fast. Can you slow down a little bit, please?
I am sorry, Chantal. My
That's
apologies.
okay. That's okay. It's just that I didn't catch what you were saying. So just slow down a little bit, please.
Right, I was saying that. All right. So for the book that you need to have is that was written by Mr. McKenzie. It's and the other book is neoliberalism, globalization, income inequality, poverty and resistance. You can go on Google to research that book and you will see the preface of that book. You can read that, but you also gonna need that book for classes. Also, there are recordings because I normally record the classes on YouTube on the neo the neoliberal podcast. So once you go and you put in Mr. Renaldo McKenzie, you will see all the classes that was previously done. You can rewatch the classes as well to get information from the classes. And if you have any questions, you can just shoot it to me and I'll answer or give you anything that you need, like materials that you can't get access to. So, but the book itself, I would encourage you guys to purchase the book. It's a very good read also, and it's not only for the class but also for your personal development as well. So you can get a book from me or Mr. McKenzie. All right, so we have 12 persons in the group.
Somebody is sorry, Chantal. Somebody is asking if the book can be purchased from Amazon.
Yeah, well, it can be purchased from Amazon. It can be. But I'll have to put it in the group and then let you guys know how you can purchase it from Amazon. That okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, good. So I will resend the article back in the group. I think persons just joined the group as well today. So you can read on that article, the Mazama, right, Dr. Mazama article about Afrocentric paradigm, right? Also the groups, person we're placing in groups of 3, so we'll have 5 groups, but I have 15 persons. So if you want to choose your group members, you can do that now. Also, I would need a person in the class who can be the class. We call the person there. We call the class, not monitor class. A person who others can ask questions or something like that in the class. Chantal, are you able to be the class go-to person?
If everybody is okay with it, sure.
Okay, then so you because you're so you will be able to talk with other persons about myself as well is available. The class rep. Thank you very much, sir. All right, so groups of 3. Person want to pick their group members, or do they want me to group them?
I'll choose my group members. I'll send it to you in the WhatsApp.
All right, no problem. So persons can choose their group members and then send it to me in the WhatsApp group.
Excuse me, Chantal, you can put me in a group, please.
All right, Miss Julia. I'm on it.
Me too.
I
You can
take-
just add me to a group
I-
as well.
I'm also, you
Yeah.
can add me to any group because I really don't know anybody.
All right, so let's put
One
Julia.
thing I would like to just mention is that you're talking about to purchase the book and thing like that. So I am in the class all the way from Trinidad. So
Okay.
I am not in Jamaica. So if anything that you are doing, you need to think of me that being away from Jamaica. So
Okay.
I just want to mention that. Mhm.
Okay, no problem, sir. No problem. I will take that in consideration. And you are in the WhatsApp group, correct?
Yes, I am in it.
Okay. So what is this? So what is this? Trinidad. Sorry, sir.
Mhm.
Hold on. Oh, where? Oh, sorry. Can you pronounce the first name for me, please? Edras.
Yeah,
Idris.
Idras Manis.
Okay, so it's asking what is Trinidad? What is this? What is Trinidad? Something like that. TRI. Sorry, I'm not sure what you're asking me, sir. Trinidad.
I don't know exactly what it is, but
Okay.
because the thing is that I am not from Trinidad exactly because I am
Okay.
Haitian.
Oh, you're an
but
Asian.
I'm-
Okay.
Yes, I'm currently working in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, no problem. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for clarifying that, Idris. Next week we'll get to meet at the first 30 minutes to an hour. I want you guys to talk a little bit about yourselves, why you're in this class, what you hope to get out of it. How long have you been at JTS? Blah blah blah. What are you doing? Idris, I heard you say you're from Trinidad, so I wanted to. You're in Trinidad. I was asking you, what is Trinidad? Trinidad. You ever heard about Trinidad?
Yes, that is a saying that everything that they say, they put a bad in it, like I love you bad. I don't know if it is that exactly that you're talking about.
No, that's not it at all. Well, don't worry, we're gonna have a guest who is an artist,
Okay.
an Israeli priest. Lives in Philadelphia. He's gonna come and share in the class. He's gonna talk about his music and the idea of Trinidad. Okay.
So I don't know much about it.
I know. So don't worry. We'll talk about Trinidad when we start. When we talk about music and the celebration of music, especially in Reggae Music Month in February. February is Reggae Music Month. we will talk about Trinidad. What is Trinidad? What is parang music? What is parang?
Yeah, I know the parang music. A lot of people speak about it, but not much knowledge of it.
Don't worry, we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, you're in Haiti. I want to know what's going on in Haiti. What's happening in Haiti? What's the latest?
But the situation of Haiti is a very complex one. Or I can say that it is the big power, the people in power, and try to marginalize the lower class. That is what I'm thinking. Using some people that don't understand the root as Black people or as Asian, so accepted to take the money, the things, and the promise that they may give them, and then to just break down the country. But like a lot of people thinking is the whole country is under this kind of pressure, but it is just two place. If we take it in a Jamaican, the way that they separate the country is like it's two parish. It's two parish, is the Atibonite and the Port-au-Prince. But after that, the other places are good. The last time I was in Haiti, I spent my holiday there and come back. But the situation is the power of the big country, especially the US. That is my thinking over our political and social economic over there. That is my understanding of it.
Great, thank you so much. You don't have to go anymore. This is good. I've done several interviews, several shows, several writings about what's going on in Haiti. I'm very familiar with what's going on in Haiti, but I have not done any interviews over the last 2 months or a month. But the last time I heard that there's still what's going on. And we will talk about the Haitian crisis and the Haitian situation. You guys would be interested to find out to learn a little bit about Haiti and what's going on there politically, or historically as well. And we usually invite some guests. The head of the IJ, Institute for Justice and Democracy in Haiti, comes and shares with the class and talks about the history of Haiti from before Aristide and what happened in Aristide and Aristide demise, which is a very important time in Caribbean history, in Haitian history. They look as if they were developed. Aristide was a man that was poised, dignified, and it looked as if the country was working on becoming a country, a real country, with challenges that the political directorate can resolve. But that was a problem. There were some people who did not want Haiti to be developed. There are some people, so they don't want Cuba to be developed, because if Cuba is developed, it's going to rival the power and the wealth of the superpower. It's going to rival the wealth of others. You don't want Jamaica to be rich. You don't want Venezuela. You want these countries to be dependent so that the mother country can continue to profit from that. Haiti and these other countries not supposed to outdo the US. Ukraine and Poland and all these countries not supposed to outdo Russia. Taiwan and all these other countries not supposed to outdo China. Because once they start to do that, then it creates a competition that will affect the wealth and the power of these superpowers. That's part of the problem, you know. But that's something that we're going to talk about later on when we start thinking about neoliberalism. But sorry for cutting you. Some of you have to go. So finish do what you're doing, Chantel. Go ahead.
So I'm finished actually, so I'm actually person in groups now, and then persons will send me in the WhatsApp group as well, their group that the group members that they are chosen to be in their groups. So I have two groups now. I have Julia and Jada and Adras in group one. And for group two is Nicholas, Amanda, and Heather.
Okay, very good.
There is also a group that was sent in the chat, Chantel. Nikisha. Janelle, and Diana.
Okay, no problem. I will check it. That's group 3. Group 1. I'll put it in the WhatsApp group, the different group members. Okay. Do have a great evening, everyone.
Great. So we finished the group. We took the register. We did a review of the syllabus today.
Yes, sir.
Important consideration. This will be available. The class will be available. So the discussions we had today is going to be available. I advise you to, when you get some time, to replay, rewatch, re-listen to the videos in class, because a lot of the exam questions come from will come from the classes that are all going to be recorded. And the good thing is that I record all the classes, and you can go back, sit back, and watch them. If you have questions, you can jot them down and reach out to us. Okay. But
Excuse me, sir, before you go.
Khadisha,
Yes, I'm not seeing the course on my Moodle platform. Where
Hi,
will
hon.
I be
You would
seeing
have
all
to
of these?
email. Sorry, you'd have to email the school, and the school's IT
I
department would
did,
add it. The
like,
same.
I emailed them twice, like from last week when I was trying to join, and then this week again. 3 times I've
Call
emailed. They
them.
said IT, I
Khadisha.
called registry. I don't know.
All
That's
right.
what happened to
And this is
me
the only
first. I'm
course
not
that's not
sure.
on the platform.
Anybody else have that
I'm
problem?
going to try again and see what happened this
All right,
week.
Chantel, can you all right, Khadisha, let me know. Send me your name. Let me know that if you're still having problem, let me know, and I'll send an email to the head of the.
Sorry, person having issues on Moodle.
Yeah, Khadisha said she's not.
I am.
Khadisha's having a problem.
It is there because I went on it today and I saw it talks about my Caribbean thoughts semester 2 from January to May.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it is there.
No,
Just check.
Chantel, that's not the
Not on
issue.
mine.
Yes, that's the issue.
Right. The issue is it's not on my Moodle platform.
Okay.
But
All right.
I'll do a follow-up, sir, and I'll also send you an email. I'll attach you to the email that I'm sending to them.
All right, please.
Okay.
Yes,
All right, no
yes,
problem.
attach it to the email, and then I'll take it from there. If you're still having problems well, you shouldn't be having problems today. If you're still having problems by Monday, let me know. I will take it up. I'll take it from there.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Definitely. All right.
Mr. McKenzie, one more question before you go. You
Yeah.
stated earlier that you're a reverend. May I ask your denomination?
United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands.
Okay. So that's a Sunday or Saturday?
Sunday, United Church, the United Church.
Okay.
And in the US, it's the United Church of Christ. The UCC Church in the US. And in Jamaica and the Cayman is the United Church of Christ. Yes. Yeah, don't worry, you guys. Next week, I'll share some more about myself. But multi-denominational, because I also help with my parents' church. Well, my mom and dad just died. My mom just died, but we have a church. We are part of the National Church of God, so I also help with their church, the National Church of God, and so on. Chantal, what church you go to?
Sir, the Church of God I go to as well, sir.
The other Chantal.
End Time Apostolic Church of Jesus Christ.
Okay, that's good. It's good to know where people go. We'll get to know more about you guys. Let me know where you guys go to church, where you worship. I know a little bit more about you, what you do for fun and stuff like that. Yes, Christine.
Hi, sir. I have
Hi.
a question and I'm scared to ask, but I'm just gonna ask because just listening to the course, I feel personally nervous. I believe that you will break down everything for me. I'm not disputing that, but I still have a little bit of nervousness entering this course. Sir, would you think it would be okay for us to do a reflection paper each week as a group? Only because it's easier for us to share knowledge and idea rather than one person that's trying to.
Yeah.
I'm so
Oh my God,
I can pull from each other mind when
I
even
feel
though
like
it's
I
we
should
can
say
pull on
yes.
each other.
I feel like the way you ask the question, I feel like I should just agree with everything you're saying. But I understand. Yes, we can do the group thing, but the first two papers I want to do an individual paper because I want to know you guys, how you write, how you reflect, how you think, and then moving forward,
Okay.
I'll make it easier for you guys. Don't worry, I'm very easy to talk to about these things. I don't like failing students. I like students doing well. I
Yes, sir, because
I'm
you're
a career student. I know about students. I went. I'm a career student, if you know what I mean. I've been in school.
sir hearing these big words, nepotism, and it's like I'm in shock, I'm in panicking, my
You're
brain
not the
is
only
going
one, sugar. I had to go and research some of the words and we must up on Google, so don't feel no way.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but when I was at
God, me
JTS,
one.
they called me the big word guy. I'm a graduate at JTS, just so you know, and I really love JTS. I want JTS to develop. We want to develop a publishing acumen, or because we want students to be able to publish books, literature. We don't have that at JTS.
Yes, sir.
At the university, we should have that. My goal is that at the end of this semester, or I can help to develop students who will now start to write and help to and the student union and all of us, we could start advocating for a publishing unit or at JTS. We used to have a bookstore. I don't know if we have a bookstore there anymore, but we should be publishing students' essays, students writing. They should be encouraged to write and publish ebooks, podcasts, and so on. I think we should create something like that. I'm trying to work with the school to do that. But first, let's first develop a Caribbean academic journal. And let's use you guys. Let's hope that you guys can start writing and contributing to the journal. Yes, Christine.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
yeah, so we have to develop words. We have to, my sister said, Renaldo, when I'm reading your book, my God, I have to have a dictionary next to me. I know that, but we're dealing with neoliberalism. We're dealing with nepotism. We're dealing with Afrocentrism and Eurocentrism, Occidentalism and Orientalism. Those are some of the ways that they have utilized to trick people. So we have to know the word.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes.
No, man, we're sorry, we're not saying we're not putting in the work, and I'm saying that maybe one or two person might be, more into it, and it's easier for us to, like, whenever we have the paper to write, we combine and we brainstorm and we explain, because sometimes it's easier to listen and share ideas while you're writing the paper, and then you grasp the concept more better than when you one in your corner just writing and trying. And it's just
Oh,
listening
that's
to
a good idea.
Chantel's enthusiasm that prompt me to say, hey, then if she's so intrigued to learn and ready to learn, maybe other persons are the same, ready to learn and ready to share what they know. So I just say, maybe let me just ask her if it's easier for us to, learn in and amongst ourselves and share our knowledge when writing our quick papers for you, Edika.
All right. Well, moving forward. Okay, fine. The first paper will be an individual reflection, but all the other reflection paper, once all the groups are organized, then you can do a reflection in your groups, and then you could take part. So that's something that we can do. But there's fine. But this first paper on the Afrocentric paradigm, we will do that an individual paper. But after that, then moving forward, all the other papers will be in group. How does that sound? Sounds good. Can we work
I'm
with that?
waiting for other person's feedback.
Sounds good.
I believe so, sir.
But okay, fine. So, and then because we don't have all the groups yet, and some people weren't here, so this, and anybody that's not here, send us an email. Let them know that everybody should put even if they didn't come to class, they have to do the assignment, the reflection paper, to read the Afrocentric paradigm and to provide a 2-page reflection paper on what they have read about what's this.
Okay, sir.
But guys, this looked great. I like the question so far. This is really good. Thank you guys so much. And I'll see you guys next week, Friday. And we will talk in the group. Thank you, Chantel. And next week, class, we won't begin by talking about the Afrocentric paradigm. We'll begin by having you guys share up a little bit about yourselves. Okay? And then I'm going to ask a quiz. No, not a quiz, a brain teaser. You throw an egg against a wall, it doesn't break, it doesn't fall. How come? We will ask you that, and then you can introduce yourself next week. All right. Take care, guys. Anything else we forgot, Chantel? Chantel? All right, guys. We lost Chantel. We stop here for now. Take care, and may God bless you and keep you. And may he cause his face to shine upon you and give you peace, both now and forevermore.